Just be
Anyway,
alive, man. Like this is around midnight, man. This is your time. You a night owl anyway, right?
yeah, nighttime.
Nighttime is the right time.
There it is. The counting eye. We like to go out in the room after midnight, especially when the moon is full. A little bit, something, midnight snack,
Oh my God,
A
you are
midnight
one of a
snack.
kind.
Yeah.
So like it's a lot to talk about. I know we talked about a little bit. I know your concerns about local politics and what's going on. You actually going to run for mayor, right? That's been
Yeah, it
confirmed.
looks like I've been talked into that. Miss
Okay.
Barbara Cooper put together a committee and she said, "We're trying to recruit you." I said, "Okay, recruit me." We've been doing studies. Main thing is to make sure they don't use these corrupt machines. These hacks that we've got in office for the county and the city
Mm-hmm.
had the money put up in 2008 by the feds to replace the deballed voting machines, which the feds found back started 2004, then 6, then 8, were totally corrupted, and there were no elections. There were only selections. In other words, the
Mm.
people with the codes picked who they wanted to have the offices, and that's it. So they had the money up for all that time, and without letting anybody know, they were threatened with lawsuits personally by the Justice Department, and they went ahead and bought the machines, but they've been sitting in a warehouse for the last 4 election cycles. That would be state and local primary and main election, and federal local primary and main election. So it's really nasty. And we're going to see if we can get those machines in so we can get some fair elections in Shelby County. And then the scandal involving Congressman Cohen and Ed Ford and multiple other members of the city council for taking bribes so that they could do two things: switch the source of energy from TVA over to a concern that one of Steve Cohen's buddies represented. And that's probably going to drive our MLG and W cost up. And basically, the entire county subcontracts with MLG and H2O for that service. And then there's this thing about those who were connected with Exxon. Like it turns out, Cohen had been given some Exxon stock, which just went up greatly because a firm was buying out the Exxon interest in California. And interestingly enough, Cohen fixed people up with another Cohen. This one, contrary to his ranting about the evils of Donald Trump, turns out to be one of Trump's right hand men who does a lot of arranging.
Mm.
So we have corruption all the way around. Ed Ford admitted he got money for it, and then he implicated a number of other city councilmen who also got money. So what is this? Another Tennessee Waltz situation? But see, Cohen, who has done nothing for the middle class in Shelby County, absolutely nothing for the black community in a 91% black congressional district, and is possessed of an interesting record over the last 12 years of introducing a binding resolution to require that the congressional cafeteria use paper straws. Now, he is head of a subcommittee of the Judicial Committee of the House. And what he's doing right now is not advocating a damn thing for black folk or any folk in Memphis. He is busy trying to push a draconian, what shall we say, oppressive law supposedly to stop Asian abuse as a result of COVID-19.
Mm.
So I find it interesting. I checked the statistics that he cited, and they're pretty consistent over the last decade. And what it basically represents is about 3,400 Asians throughout America that get assaulted, robbed, shot, or wounded. And that's very much associated with the fact that some, like the Koreans, run liquor stores, convenience stores, wig shops, weave shops, nail salons, and such like. That's just the cost of doing business in the hood. The percentage of people, black, who operate businesses in the hood that have those same things happen to them is much, much higher. So, what I'm looking at is, okay, I am concerned that it is a bad thing to persecute Asians. However, the law, as they have formulated it, doesn't do much, particularly for Asians, but gives wide open front door to jack up black folk, especially anybody who advocates anything that somebody is going to say, oh, you're inciting some people to be unruly. Well, I look at the Democratic Party, LGBTQ, BLM, and Antifa. And I may have talked to you about it more than a year ago. I saw all these clowns getting out there doing this aggravated spring break nonsense, and the Democratic Party condoning them. That's just going to condition the wrong people in the public to violence, get them accustomed to it, and essentially galvanize them to give vent to their emotions and do some awful stuff. And that's what you're seeing with all of these shootings going on. And one of the ways you can tell that that is what's driving it is because the people that do it don't go bam and pop a cap on themselves. You know how usually when somebody did this shoot 'em up stuff, they killed themselves when the police were about to capture them. Nobody is shooting self, they're surrendering. And that's one of the differences between what you saw before and what you see now. And that characteristic is an aspect of people being driven by, hey, how about me too? Everybody's having fun, burning stuff up, looting, and all this other stuff. Why don't I get in? I'm emotional. Let me go do it. That's the driving engine. And their solution for these problems is basically just pouring more gas on the fire, because essentially it's a character issue. It's not guns. It's not any of the rest. And there was an interesting case out of our Sixth Circuit. That's the one that deals with Memphis. They declared that ban on bump stocks to be illegal. Said it's not a machine gun under the legal definition, so they can't ban it. The legal definition of a machine gun is it fires more than once per pull of the trigger. So if you have to keep pulling the trigger to make it fire, that's not a machine gun. And on a bump stock, all it's doing is it just helps you. So if you hold the thing lightly and pull forward on the forward grip, the gun bounces off your shoulder, connects your finger, and it just keeps. That's just the meat on your shoulder. So it's crap. That's not going to solve anything. And that was because one guy had that, and that was that thing in Vegas where the guy was up in the hotel room. But they've got exhibition, shooters for some of the gun companies. There's a guy named Jerry Mikulek, and he can shoot an 8-shot revolver 8 times in 1 second just using his finger, old time revolver. Sounds like a machine gun. Excuse me.
The Vegas shooter's interest, because he said like normally you guys would turn themselves in, but he actually allegedly killed himself. Or what happened? Somebody killed him, or he killed himself?
I think he killed himself. But up until recently, this last week or so, they've all been killing themselves. Now they don't. That's a symptom that they just don't account what they're doing other than I feel like it.
Right.
So you had this spectacle for a year and a half that was driven by Black Lives Matter, which is the way it is actually construed as Black Lesbian Mania, because I don't use that term anymore. I do BFM. Black folk matter, black fathers matter, black families matter, black fealty, black firearms, black finance, all this kind of stuff. because Black Lives Matter was a hustle. They raised $97 million, and that was basically going to fund the communications and logistics for all of this crap you saw out in the streets. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the Democratic Party was exploiting it so they could get Donald Trump, and you can get Van Jones on Crying Negro Network going, "Oh, I'm so happy that we beat Donald Trump. Oh, I'm so happy, folks." You know, so I studied propaganda under some of the best. In fact, one of my instructors that I wound up being teaching assistant for was, get this, head of propaganda for the Soviet KGB. She was just out of that and had been a professor, and she was a visiting professor emeritus from the University of Moscow in 1967-68. This is when the Cold War was going on. This was the real deal. So this that you are seeing, I was taught about that 53 years ago, 54 years ago. It's a tactic. So, you know, it's sort of like if you want to say we need a new fireman, we need more money for the fire department, and you're not having any fires, everybody looks at you like you're crazy. But when you start wanting to impose these draconian fascist methods, you create some fires that you can claim they need you to put out.
Right.
So that's what that's about. I feel for the Asians, but like, look at this thing down here in Atlanta. They said, way you listen to it, it was 8 Asians. There were only 4 Asians. They were at one massage parlor. There were 2 black women and 2 white women at the other massage parlor that was called Asian Massage. And it turns out, well, it looks like it is alleged through police sources that these 2 massage parlors were running a little prostitution ring on the side. So the guy that shot them up and surrendered says he did it to stop temptation. And he was a regular customer. He just didn't walk in there and, oh, look, wow, Asians. He went in there and, let's just say, the victims had serviced him a time or 2. But, you know, it's tragic.
But is it a hate crime, though?
It's not a hate crime. The other thing is you also have something in common with him and this clown out here in Colorado. They were bullied. You know, we have to been bringing the parents and the police and the faculty and everyone to stop this bullying. You know, they don't teach the kid to stand up to a bully so he can be a man, or a woman, I guess. They have to stand up to it too. Somebody's supposed to do it for you. So it's entitlement. I want to feel it. And they're also pushing this drag queen thing kind of heavy. I always particularly was offended by that. And it's not an obvious reason, but I am offended by black folk that don't want to acknowledge their blackness and claim, I'm not black, look at me, I'm colored, you know, I'm a person of color. Yeah, you cop out punk. You just scared to take the time to do your job, man, and do what you got to do to be part of it. We went through that in the 60s. And when these folk, I don't like what I am, I'm another kind of gender, I have a special pronoun, that's just you hate what you are, and you want to be something, you hate that too, so you're real sicko. That's like black folk that hate being black. So I don't buy that anyway. The other thing that's coming up is this Equality Act. When you read the Equality Act, it's interesting because its overall effect is it wants to take LGBTQ as a cult and treat it as a secular religion. Right now, you cannot discriminate against somebody for race, for their particular color or complexion, for their age, for their national origin, for their medical condition, for their sex, nor for religion. Now, religion is not something you were born with. It's something you got indoctrinated with early on. And the indoctrination is so tense and the passions evoked are so great, you don't want to worry about having another war of religion or a crusade or something going on or a jihad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What they want to do is equate LGBTQ with being a secular religion. But here's the problem with a formal religion, the state cannot be involved in the religion. It cannot teach it. It cannot feature it. It cannot support it. It just does nothing except allow it the freedom to be, so long as nobody's getting hurt or jacked around or the law's not being broken. All right. But as you can see with this having drag queens talk to school children, formally teaching gay education, gay sex education in the schools and such like, that would change the equation. So the state itself became one of the primary instruments for furthering this secular religion. Now, one of the biggest problems this country has ever faced is race.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't see them doing this for the black thing all year long. They've got a colored history month where all you do is get names and dates, and that's irrelevant because you study history to study its lessons, like what is the significance, but we never talk about that. It's, oh, somebody invented this, somebody that, somebody buck dance, and some chick flashed her ass, in such and such 1932 in Paris.
Mm.
And that's essentially irrelevant because it teaches no lesson. Lessons are stuff like, why is it that America has these 100-year cycles of public violence?
Mm-hmm.
1919, 1920, 21, 22, when there were all of these riots where unruly white people were lynching black people in urban and rural areas. That's when so-called Black Wall Street down here in Oklahoma got burned up and black folk got lynched, and almost 500 blacks got lynched in Washington, D.C. in 1919, this kind of thing. And then you got the 50-year sub-cycle. What'd you get with that? Instead of good old boy Klansman type, you got long-haired, pinko, commie-loving, beatnik hippies who were protesting the war, and you got black folk burning down cities. We had BLM, but that really wasn't black folk, because if you saw 11 people out there on a BLM setup, what you saw was 9 white folk and 1 or 2 black folk, and most of them were gay or lesbian. And you can go on still on the BLM site, and they'll tell you, we arrange communications, transportation, and organization for protest and demonstrations. That's where the money went. And they also tell you on the site and disclosure, and we've talked about this, money is raised by Act Blue, which is a Democratic Front organization. The money is split between LGBTQ, IA+, BLM, and Act Blue.
Mm.
And you think you're trying to do something to save black folk and black men from getting shot down by police, but most of their demonstrations were black businesses getting burnt down, protesting some black getting killed by a cop. And that was just ridiculous. The other point is that in there, what we believe that they took down when we started attacking it over social media was they are for the destruction of the traditional nuclear family. It says they are a queer affirming organization. They push for removing age as a constraint in consent. They were for destruction of so-called cisgender privilege, which is straight man privilege. Cis, by the way, is not a valid word. It was coined by the Germans 100 years ago to talk about the male function in regular in and out sex, okay?
Mm-hmm.
About 10 years ago, 8 years ago, they started picking up cis is something cute to be code for straight black, well, for straight folk, men and women. So it's gotten pretty screwed up. They've got contradictions built in. Women have gone through all these changes trying to get equality for women's sports, and now you let boys who can't make the varsity put on bras and wigs, and they get to compete against the girls. People say, well, they need a tranny league. No, they don't need a damn tranny league, because that just fosters more of this. I hate myself because I'm black. I'm so ashamed, this kind of thing. And boys league, girls league, and if you can't make the damn team, sit your ass in the bleachers like everybody else who can't. This is part of that entitlement participation culture where everybody gets a ribbon. There's no first, second, and third place. That is personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
About a year and a half ago, before this COVID thing hit, I was over at Lowe's, one of the hardware places.
Yeah.
Young lady said, Uncle Joe. And I looked and I didn't recognize her because the last time I'd seen her, she'd been like 13, 14. So now she was like, well, it turned out to be 19. So she had her arm in one of these rigid casts where there was a frame, so she couldn't move the thing. It wasn't a sling, but a frame.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what happened to your arm? She said, well, I was in the martial arts. I said, yeah, you were pretty good even back then. She said, well, I got a scholarship to do women's wrestling. She said, so one of the meets, we had to compete against these two gay boys who claimed to be girls. And I refused, and they told me I'd lose my scholarship if I did, and we would forfeit. So there were two of them. And the other girl on my team that wrestled them, she got 3 cracked ribs and a dislocated jaw. And I got a compound fracture in my arm, and I've had 3 operations. And she started crying. She said it hurts, so she can't sleep. And the pain medication keeps her from focusing on her studies. And she didn't know what she was going to do. And she just broke down on the lot. It was wrong. So I took her for some coffee down here at Olive Garden on Winchester so she could talk it out. But see, that kind of thing is wrong. One of these girls is going to get killed by one of these sissified fools. They have one kid that was rated number 360 for one in men's track, and now they want to rate him number 1 in women's track. He's not a woman. So what is this? That's getting sick. And they actually are using that because it's a way to push this fluid gender nonsense. And that's one of the reasons they pushed Michael Jackson so much, because he was androgynous, and he had changed from being a nice, cute looking black kid, 9, 10 years old, to a super freak, look with a Pokemon nose and a surgically extended chin, high cheekbones, and Polynesian hair woven from the inside of his scalp out. And he had so many nose operations it went necrotic, and they had to amputate it, and he looked like a zombie, decayed zombie. And you can see even now on some of those videos when they've got him performing, after he performs for a while, you can see the line of the prostheses for the fake nose and the tape that's holding it on. It's just sickness. And see, that exemplifies the whole thing. Jackson, he lost his nose trying to not look like he was black. And he got lasered all across the face to destroy his melanin cells. And the reason he was wearing that one white glove is because they hadn't done all of the laser work on his hands, so they would appear white. So this is just an exemplar of self-hate where this whole thing can lead to. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is the Boy Scouts. My old man was one. I
Mm-hmm.
was one. I was a scoutmaster around here 12, 15 years, but I bailed when they started talking about open gay scout leaders. I said, "Oh, that's not going to work." And then now there are no more Boy Scouts because they went bankrupt settling these claims of child molestation. And then they wanted to bring girls in, and I'm saying, no, look, I took boys down for the weekend Camp Kaikima. And there's no way in the devil that a grown man should be down there with boys and young little girls who are running. No, that doesn't work. And they've got Cub Scout, they've got Girl Scouts, Campfire Girls, Brownies, and all that. Why you need to put them in the Boy Scouts?
Mm-hmm.
It was just trying to push that agenda, and it didn't work because you give somebody that gets a hard on behind little kids, and you don't need to put them anywhere where they handle kids. And that's what was going on. So we are where we are, and we don't want the whole country or our school system to turn into the Boy Scouts.
Well, Judge, I'm gonna ask. Come in. You said I'm glad you're saying all the stuff you're saying because I'm looking at. I'm sharing the screen with the Denver airport. They got these weird New World Order murals with the rainbow agenda. All these weird
I
scenes.
see that.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about
that?
that? Yeah, but like they telling you what you saying right now is what they're showing us through the art, what they're trying to do.
Now it's in an airport.
Yeah, Denver. Yeah,
You can't put up a nativity scene in an airport. You can't put the 10 Commandments up on City Hall. You can't put a Christmas tree in. The students can't sing Christmas carols. They can't sit there and recite the Quran. They can't go through and recite the Torah. But the school is forcing this stuff down in the kids' throats. The airports that are governmental entities, they are putting these murals up on the wall. What is this?
But don't you think it's strange that Colorado have all these instances of mass shootings? You go back to Columbine, where they allegedly killed themselves. And I believe their parents were working in the military industry complex, or the Dark Knight shooter. I believe his grandfather was CIA at one point. You think there's a connection between these shootings and the government by any chance?
What often happens, and I don't want to put it on the women, but I have to this way, is dad's got one of these kind of jobs, and you know how women sometimes do this thing where whatever their husband's doing is wrong, don't care what it is. They either work too much or they don't work enough. And your father is working in this defense industry. That's just awful. And they call themselves trying to help the kid out and sissifying the boy, and they wind up getting a monster.
Yeah, but this Denver thing, it's like they're putting it right in your face. It's kind of like, you ever heard of this thing called the Georgia Guidestones down in Georgia? Have you heard of that?
No, like, what is that?
It's like a Stonehenge, replica of Stonehenge, but what it was placed in this place, like 90 miles, I guess, north of Atlanta, in the middle of a cow pasture back in 1980. And basically, it's like a 10 commandments for the New World Order, where they're trying to say we're trying to get the population size down to 500 million people. And they give you like a 10 commandments how to live in this new world where the population is reduced from billions of people to 500 million. So
well, the Chinese aren't going to quite go along with that. And the Chinese are taking over from America, and America took over from Great Britain. Great Britain got fat, degenerate, and it decayed. America is getting a fat, degenerate, and it's decaying, and the Chinese are doing something else. The Americans just got an order from Commander-in-Chief Biden to change the fitness standards so it would accommodate women in combat units. Instead of having the vigorous best of the best, now they got to be secondary so they can accommodate some woman who has dreams. Meanwhile, the People's Republic of China just instituted a masculinity man up campaign. Now, who do you think's going to prevail? And then there are other things, see, that you don't understand what you're looking at. The U.S. Navy released a synopsis of some of its computer
Okay.
simulations and war games that started in 2018. And they say, or the Navy says, if the Chinese wanted to invade Taiwan, there's not a damn thing we can do about it other than start World War III, and it's not worth it. The Air Force is saying in any scenario where we conflict with the Chinese, the U.S. Air Force gets wiped out in 48 hours unless you go World War III, and it ain't worth it. They call it a fait accompli, or a thing has already been accomplished as soon as you start it. Trump, with his economic policies against China, was saying, look, you guys are selling a lot of products over here. You have a huge manufacturing capacity that you need to use, so you improve conditions in China. And if you don't back off of this, well, guess what? La di da, you're going to suffer economically. That was a good trade off. Now, idiot Biden comes in there with his son, Hunter, who has been working out deals with the Chinese, and they back off of the economic sanctions. And now the Navy is whining about, look, we can't do anything about this. If these guys want to invade Taiwan, we can't do a damn thing. And you need to start preparing what you're going to say to save face. The Air Force is saying, the Obama administration emasculated the whole Air Force, not literally, but figuratively in terms of its equipment. Like we have one wing of F-22 fighters, and the Chinese have close to 2,500 comparable fighters, and we have somewhere around 45 to 50. And the Obama administration cut off the production. They took the F-14 Tomcat out of service. It was a very, very effective fighter. They took the F-117 stealth fighter out of service. They did not shore up the F-15 fleet, which is suffering from metal fatigue. And most of the F-16s are way over age now, although the production lines open, making them for a foreign interest. So it's a pretty bad situation. And that F-35 has been delayed because the Chinese, if you remember, about 14 years ago, hacked into the computer system so they can control all of the F-35s, and they still haven't worked that out. And it turns out that even against old technology, when an F-35 gets in these red flag dogfights with an old F-16, they get their asses whipped every damn time. In other words, 90-some% plus of air-to-air simulated combats between the old 1982 F-16s and the brand new F-35s, the F-35s lose. So, and the Chinese have something much better than that. And by the way, the Indians went in a cooperative venture with the Chinese to make them same fighter planes. So every time the Indian Air Force gets invited to participate in Top Gun or Red Flag, the first is the Navy, the second is the Air Force. The Indians beat the U.S. Air Force. So that doesn't look well. So now you've got this laptop that's in front of the grand jury and has been since February last year, and nobody can, call them off. And PCC has been releasing what's on that laptop because they got to copy the whole thing, Giuliani et al. And what's most interesting on there is a White House tape, which is not just like Nixon where it's audio, but it's a video.
Yeah.
So Obama is sitting on the front of his desk, leaning on the front of his desk with his arms folded. Biden's sitting down, facing him. Hunter Biden is next to Dad, and this Chinese guy is standing. And Obama is saying, let me get this straight. Out of this $1 billion that you're giving Hunter's company, I get 10%, Joe gets 10%, Hunter gets 10%. The Chinese guy is saying, yeah. And he said, what we got to do is call off the Navy patrols. And the Chinese rep is saying, yeah, 10% of the billion's $100 million. So each of them's getting $100 million apiece. That's corruption and that's treason. If you read Military Times, which is the official monthly magazine of the Defense Department, you will note that contemporaneously with when they said they were going to call these patrols off, the admirals are complaining about they've been ordered to stand down and not conduct as vigorous a set of patrol. Also, they had a problem with personnel shortages and resource shortages, so they were having all of these collisions involving naval warships and civilian ships because the crews weren't trained properly in navigation, watch keeping, and station keeping. So it's a big disaster in the making, and it started off on the tail end of Bush, continued full force under the Obama tang. Trump tried to turn it around with economic sanctions, and now Joe and top clown and top cop Imhoff, it doesn't look too cool.
I mean,
So I'm looking at Biden's declared wealth. I find it interesting that somebody since his mid-20s has gotten no paycheck outside of a government check becomes a multimillionaire. It's a classic symptom of being bribed, just like Steve Cohen getting those shares of Exxon given to him. And there is a Mexican oil company that is buying out Exxon's interest in California. So his stock shares went up greatly in value. See, that's just bribery.
what you want? But wasn't Steve Cohen with Al Gore just a couple weeks ago protesting the Bahia pipeline initiative?
Yeah, but the point is what's come out is he was taking bribes to push it through.
Okay. So I mean, cause also the other Cohen was Mike Cohen, who was Trump lawyer.
Yeah, with Trump's lawyer, one of his lawyers. So
are they related?
No, they're not. But Steve Cohen hooked up with Mike Cohen to introduce somebody else to MLG and W that Mike Cohen wanted him to introduce, so they will switch from getting their energy from TVA to the concern that that Trump Cohen was trying to get him together on. Now, you heard all that shrieking and hollering that Congressman Cohen was doing about Trump, but yet he's cooperating with him financially.
That's interesting. Well, politics make for strange bedfellows, as they say.
Politics makes from Memphis. Politics makes from crooked son of a bitches as well as bedfellows, banging bedfellows, playing a little strange, freaky stuff.
I gotta ask you because people want to know your opinion on the Suez Canal situation with the boat. That's crazy. Was that done on purpose though? Is that like personal?
No. What's interesting is to watch an old video clip of one of the Iowa class battleships going through the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm.
The Panama Canal is 110 feet wide.
Okay.
An Iowa class battleship is 108 feet wide. So you got this 58,000 ton, 887 foot monster with 12 inches on each side, and you're trying to maneuver it through this lock. All right.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the same thing that happened in the Suez Canal. It's almost 100 some years old. They didn't anticipate some 500,000 ton oil tanker going through this stuff. And yeah, they got caught. It's inevitable.
It's like you're on the expressway when the truck is too high for the bridge. Like, you think they have the logistics better down, but I mean, you still have stuff like that happen.
Well, see, the other problem is the methodology you have to use to tow this thing back into alignment. at 300 to 500,000 tons, when these things get up to speed coming across the Atlantic, it takes them 25 miles to make a turn or slow down.
Wow.
They got to start going into reverse 100 miles before they get to 150 miles before they get to the port they're going to, in order to be able to slow down and stop by the time they get to the port. So that's a whole lot of mass to be moving. That's 500,000 tons of mass, maybe.
Was just somebody had a question. They said, "How about the Russian S-400 SAM system? Are you familiar with that?"
Yeah, surface to air missile. That's not good for us.
Okay.
See, our technology has slipped. Right now, there is a big mess. Air Force officers like to be hot shot, hot rod, hot jockeys, right?
Mm-hmm.
They like supersonic. They've got this thing called the A-10 Thunderbolt, more familiarly known as the Warthog. There has never been anything to bust up tanks like that ever, but they keep wanting to get rid of it and have a supersonic toy. Well, the Warthogs are going on 40 years old. And when I say that, they've not only been making them for a bit longer than that, almost 50 years, some of the planes are 40 years old.
Mm.
And they want to replace them with the F-35, which uses up a lot more fuel dashing across the battlefield, and they don't have loiter time of several hours. So they really don't have anything in the pipeline to replace the A-10. F-130, the F-35 isn't going to get it, and they don't have enough of them either. And they still have flawed computer systems because the Chinese hacked the software.
Well, ask this, Judge, Beijing Joe, Sleepy Joe, are we set up for the real live version of Red Dawn, that movie from the 80s with a
No,
Russian?
that's not going to happen.
So what is going to happen in your take?
See, let me explain one of the things about the Second Amendment. The inventors of guerrilla warfare in the modern times are those people that had it out with Britain in 1776.
Mm-hmm.
They call that now asymmetric war.
Mm.
You've got peasants in Afghanistan are armed enough so that the U.S. Army can't beat them. The Soviet Army couldn't beat them because they can engage in long-term guerrilla war that they call asymmetric warfare. The Second Amendment was essentially to assure that the public stayed well enough armed so if some tyranny decided it was going to impose itself, the American people could engage in what we would now call an effective asymmetric war, so we could not be suppressed. Now, that would also keep something like Red Dawn from happening. And the original premise on the movie and the book was that Cuba was going to invade the U.S., and there are not enough people in Cuba to overcome the civilian population and the military population. Formal military and the civilian population. The other thing about keeping and bearing arms in the Second Amendment is the U.S. had a distinction that some clowns forget about, and is that every war we've been in, everybody else said, damn, these Yankees can shoot, or these Americans can shoot, or these GIs can shoot, because they're familiar with them. And so you take somebody in the typical foreign military, and the first time he's ever held a gun in his hand is after he gets issued one in basic training, and comes time for marksmanship. For a lot of Americans, a significant number of them, they've been shooting guns and they already kind of know how to shoot when they show up. That was the purpose of the National Rifle Association. Some former Union generals noted that the South, the Confederate, the rebels, were better marksmen than the Union soldiers, so they wanted to make up for that deficit in marksmanship. They did.
Mm.
And this whole thing about, oh my God, what do they need assault rifles for? Well, what are you going to do with a 150-year-old revolver design? Well, yeah, a 150-year-old lever action design, a 180-year-old bolt action design. If you did have to fight or put up an asymmetric resistance to a tyrannical takeover, which without the people intending it, they're doing everything to set one up. You also will note the Biden's administration's amicus brief they filed in an interesting matter that's at the Supreme Court now. And what that's about is they want to have warrantless searches and seizures if the subject is guns. Now, the right to be armed is a constitutional right, part of the Bill of Rights. It is the Second Amendment, which is necessary to keep the First Amendment, freedom of speech and exchange of ideas, and rights to redress the government for grievances. They want to abrogate another fundamental right, the Fourth Amendment, when it involves another fundamental right, the Second Amendment. It's crazy because it's a slippery slope. When you set the precedent, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 years later, the logic of the precedent becomes available for something that a lot of people never anticipated. You have censorship of the press. Try saying anything about LGBTQIA on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Try even saying the election had fraud that occurred during the course of it, and you'll see censorship. I may have even told you some time ago, I said, these folk are going to be emboldened, I think, by the outcome of the election. Then you're going to start seeing the quick imposition of censorship.
Well, Judge, I know we talked about this, raised a question about Red Dawn. I mean, do we have a sleeper cell? I mean, I think about the courts, they went to sleep. They AWOL, and I'm looking at Biden and his deals with China. I mean, had they already taken over without firing a shot?
Let's try it this way. Ordinarily, what happens is an autocratic government takes over.
Mm-hmm.
And then they censor everything and take control of the press.
Okay. What?
Try it this way. 50 years ago, these elements started taking over the press. Now they control mainstream media, social media, at least in terms of the vehicles of social media. And what they've done is they've got talent, aka Biden and Imhoff, that's Harris, occupying the White House and in line for the White House, who do their bidding. Instead of having the government take over and then suppress the press and put their own flunkies in the press to say what the regime wants, the press has already been taken over and the press sets up the regime it wants. You've noticed the things they talk about now in the media aren't what they were talking about 4 months ago.
So I'll give like Dana, the real Dana, she's up. Jersey Red is up tonight. She said, while you guys up late, don't forget Formula One, first race of the season, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Go Hamilton.
11 a.m. Eastern. I watched the qualifications today. Mercedes was struggling all week long in practice. Hamilton wasn't doing too well. It looked like Red Bull with this young Dutchman Verstappen was going to be the hot thing. So it came down to the wire. And on the last qualification lap, Hamilton was ahead of Verstappen on that lap. And when he crossed the timer, he jumped to provisional pole. And then Verstappen came in and Red Bulled him with 0.02 of a second quicker time. So Verstappen's got pole 1 for the season. Hamilton's next to him on the front row. And then they have Gasly, who is driving what last year was an off-brand car on the second row. And Valtteri Bottas, who drives for Mercedes, is sitting next to him. Now, it's interesting what Mercedes has done. They're known as Silberpijpen, silver arrows. But last year, in empathy for the black cars in America, they painted all of their cars black, and all the drivers have black overalls, as does their pit crew. So Hamilton leads a quiet dedication and reflection before every race, or did all last season, unlike what happened with Kaepernick. They listen to him, and he's conducting a diversity program for Formula One. He's the only black man that's ever raced in Formula One. And right now, he's 7 times world champion, and there's only one other person that's done that in 80 years. He has led more laps than anybody else in Formula One history. He's won more pole positions than anybody else in Formula One history. He's tied for the most what they call hat tricks, which means you got the pole, you set the fastest lap, you led every lap of the race, and you won the race. So he has most of the tracks. He holds the record for the number of victories, and I think he's won the American Grand Prix 7 times. But, you know, they don't give him any play in the United States.
That's interesting. Wow.
And he's black, man. He's a nice young man, too.
That's probably why he don't got no dirt on him like that. He's not a bad boy like that.
Well, I mean, he's trying to be street credible. He got braided hair, and he got tats and all the earrings and piercings and everything. He's a bachelor. He's got his own bright red jet plane, and he runs the ladies. And he can sing and play an instrument, so they're trying to recruit him for other entertainments afterwards.
I'm surprised
he's got a good voice.
Yeah, I'm probably ain't done any movies or released any albums over here. It's like he was made for America.
Yeah, well, you know, he was dating one of the Williams girls, one of the tennis players, for a while.
Okay. Well, I mean, he's living life, man. Like he's living his best life. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Shout out from Sister Mimi. Thank you, Brother Ron, for having the honorable and genius Judge Joe Brown.
Hi, Miss Mimi. Miss Mimi is something else. She is quite a politically astute lady.
Yes.
And very erudite and up to speed on what's going on.
She is. Definitely. I'm just trying to, it's a lot of people. You got a lot of fans in here, Judge. A lot of people coming home from the club, or will be coming home from the club listening to you now. Voice of reason.
By the way, here in Shelby County, they made an announcement that they got their first few cases of the new strain of corona, SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it's 50% more virulent, they say, and 30% more fatal, more lethal. There are 2 other mutant viruses that are existing in various places, so it's interesting that we're letting our guard down. And the other thing, too, is the latest data I was reading, not on from the news media, but from the research papers, is there is a pickup in infection and death of 30 and 40-year-old people who are in good health. They get what they call a cytokine storm, which means their bodies react so strongly and produce so many antibodies so quickly to infections of this COVID-19 virus that the immune response kills the person's own organs. Crazy. I got my first shot. I'm trying to get my second one, and I have to wait until April 1st, but I can't find any place right now that is taking appointments for anything past March 27th. And all of those are already filled up.
Yeah, you know what? Interesting. I don't know, man. I know you took it. I know you got faith in the science, Judge. I recently lost a former co-worker. His wife took the vaccine shot. She took hers because she's a school teacher, and she said she had her arm was hurting, but her husband, he took the COVID test. He was good. Then also he took that shot. He got it from Kroger's, and she said on this past Monday she found him unconscious. Then by Tuesday he was in the hospital. He was in the hospital that Monday. They say he had pneumonia, lung collapse. I'm not saying. Then Tuesday he passed. They said it was a heart attack.
Well, you know what? Let's say this. Like anything, every single vaccine they have out there, including the ones for measles, there are fatalities.
Right.
It's a risk factor, but you live on the planet Earth and there's always risk. I remember when I first got elected judge 30 some years ago, it was July. And I was in a park that's now closed. It was on the south side of the airport. It was clear, not a cloud in the sky. And I was going around talking to people that were at picnics in the area. So I was leaning on the tree, tired, and I just pushed off, took one step, boom, the tree got hit by a bolt of lightning. Wow. Splinters flew all over everywhere. The tree caught on fire. Where I had been leaning just crisped from the power of the current going through there. So if I hadn't pushed up, it was less than a second before it hit. I pushed up, took a half a step, bam. Now I could have been wiped out right then. So it's hazardous being alive on America. It's hazardous being alive on the North American continent. Hazardous being alive on Earth. We just had here for Shelby County. I'm looking at it right now. It's saying red at the top. It's saying flash flood warning. Shelby County tornado warning. We had it for about 45 minutes. That's where all the sirens were on. And it was just continuous lightning, where it wasn't just one bolt. It was just a continuous rumble for like 5 minutes. And it was broad daylight almost outside from the effect. You could get hit by a bolt of light. I had another tree I had in my front yard about 9 years ago got hit by a bolt of lightning. Had to replace it. So, I mean, you can get wiped out being on Earth. You can get a fatal reaction to this. But I do say this. I now know 23 people who are still breathing who came down with COVID-19. And I know 19 I was acquainted with that are now dead. Now, granted, they may have had compromised conditions, but if they hadn't caught COVID-19, they'd still be somebody's mom, dad, grandparent, aunt, uncle, friend, co-worker, or neighbor. So I'm just saying, step up and take the risk or don't. I would just suggest, from what I've been reading with the research papers, you would have better odds if you took the vaccination. Now, they even tell you in the disclosure form you get when you get the vaccination, there's no guarantee that you can't give the disease to somebody else. There's no guarantee that it's actually an effective preventer of the disease. They tell you that the vaccine has not been around long enough, nor has the disease itself, to know how long your immunity is. And they tell you on the disclosure, it may prove to be necessary to have a regular booster. That's like you get a flu shot every year if you get flu shots. Now, over the last 40 some years, I have had a flu shot every year but 4, and all 4 of those years I came down, was horribly sick with the flu. I'm susceptible to it, apparently. I got my pneumonia vaccination. I already had rubella, the mumps, whooping cough, Measles. I already had those things. Chicken pox. And they did not have inoculations available when I was a kid, but I caught them and they were miserable diseases. I know that everybody, including me and my family, were lined up to get the first Salk vaccine, and they were saying that out of every 100,000 people, there were roughly 1,200 folk that were going to die of it. But the disease was so horrible that everybody was ready to take the risk. But see, you had people who had fought in World War One, been on the home front for that, World War II, Korea, and they weren't adverse to taking risks. Now everybody goes, "Oh my God!" And I noticed something else too. When I was in elementary school, there would always be two size large teachers with the nurse when they vaccinated the kids who didn't have the vaccinations. And like me, I just walked up, give me the shot. Oh, very good. Here, get a sucker, pick one out. Tootsie Roll. I like Tootsie Roll. Okay, so I got a Tootsie Roll. But some of the other kids, my classmates, start screaming, throwing themselves down on the floor. And the bigger teachers would just pick them up, hold them up off the floor on the wall, ram them up against there, and the nurse would shoot them up and they'd screech and say, go act like a man, son. Go wipe your face, blow your nose. Now get out of here. Next one.
Now, did they have to get your parents' consent to do that, to give you the shot, or they just did it? I mean, I just was curious.
The parents gave consent, but the alternative was you couldn't go to school if you didn't have it.
So it made them an offer they couldn't refuse anyway. Just like they're gonna start.
Yeah. And the
Eventually.
parents didn't give a damn. I mean, nobody was upset about injections. No, you knew they were going to have problems. But see, every time we had a measles epidemic in elementary school, we would always have an assembly after the epidemic was over. We'd say, this is a ceremony to honor our fellow students, Alan and Thomas and John and Wallace and Susan and Sally and so on, who are no longer with us. I didn't know anybody named Tamika or anything like that then, or Sean or Jamal, but all of the regular names. After every time there'd be 4, 5, 6 kids in the school that didn't make it. I had somebody that was a senior director with CDC, retired now, or about to retire. 2 years ago, they had a measles outbreak up here in upstate New York, and she told me there were 27 folk died of it. See, these diseases will kill you. Chicken pox, okay, I'm fortunate. I'm 70 something and I haven't got any effects now. But you see the ads for the drugs on TV about getting shingles if you had chicken pox. And I know some people that suffer from that, and that ain't nothing to play with.
Come on, if you get chicken pox when you're older or when you got
younger, when you were a kid, and you may have it when you start getting 60, 65, 70.
Oh, so it's kind of dormant. It's dormant.
Yeah.
That's the price of living long, right? Some stuff start catching up with
but not everybody gets it. But the problem is that people don't get the vaccinations now, and they could, and they would not have to worry about 40 years in their future coming down with shingles and itching like hell and looking like you're diseased.
I'm sorry. I hear you what you said. But Joe, what about the early days of the polio vaccine where people were getting cancer or connected to the vaccine? I ain't saying
anybody give a damn. We all had to go work with charities when we were in elementary school, and we got shown this, and the parents would take you to go visit relatives lived in the country to get away from the cities because people just came down with it. It was a plague every summer. And they had these things called iron lungs. The victims' chest muscles were paralyzed, so they couldn't breathe. So they laid them flat on their back, and they had this big metal cylinder they called an iron lung that they were sealed in, and they had a rubber collar around their neck that the victims described as making you feel like you were strangling. And the lung would pump air in to compress your chest and then evacuate it so your chest would expand, pump. They didn't have all those oxygen intubation devices back then, so they had to pump your chest so you could breathe. And we always would go down and visit, and after we got the inoculations or the vaccine, so we were safe, we'd look through the windows and they would be sweating and moaning and just looking completely miserable, and everybody was anxious to get it. I knew Wilma Rudolph, and she wound up going to the Olympics, but she told me how miserable it was when she came down with it as a child and what she had to go through to compensate for it.
She participated in 1960, right? Wrong.
Yeah, ooh, that long-legged fine woman. She and Naomi Natias, one of her buddies, was working at UCLA on the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a broke student, and they fed me dinner on more than many occasions. I was ever so grateful. First time I saw Wilma, I was walking up the stairs, and she was coming down, and I was looking at my notes, and I looked up and saw these long, pretty legs and a micro mini dress. I said, "Oh, goddamn." She said, "Brother," I said, "Oh, I got a heart attack. Oh, shit. Oh, God." So she started laughing.
Uh-huh.
And she was a great person. I always used to tease her. I said, "You know what? You do not photograph worth a damn, because you movie star fine." But she was, she did, but she's one hell of a track runner.
Yeah, but she didn't live that long. I mean, she died about 20-some years ago. About 1994. She didn't live a long time.
Well,
About 54 years old. She was young.
Yeah. But she was great people. And that might have been part of the consequences of having had polio as a child. Remember, FDR couldn't walk because he had polio.
But he got it when he was like 39.
Yeah.
They think it might be something else now, though. I heard. They think
I know, but
now
at
he
the
got it at
time
39. That's kind of
the
late.
Salk vaccine got offered, everybody was fighting to get it.
Okay.
But unlike right now, they put it in the schools, they put it in the office buildings, they put it in the post office, they put it in the police department, the sheriff's department, the teachers lined up to get the stuff. You know,
yeah, she was fine. I'm looking at her judge right now. I'm looking at her hair relaxed. Women was fine.
Yeah, oh, fine. She was really beautiful people. She had a great sense of humor too. She'd keep you laughing.
Oh man. Yeah, she's beautiful. But I gotta ask you, Dana has not went to sleep. I don't want her to miss those racing matches tomorrow or today.
I've got my alarm clock.
She got
she doesn't have to get up early. It's 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
She said he said he was going to continue the kneeling this season. However, Mercedes put a rainbow symbol on their black cars that says #end racism. So they've been co-opted.
See how they're trying to co-opt every damn thing. You know, they jumped him because he jumped his sister. His sister brought his nephew to a family party in a dress, and he went off on her, and he put something on social media about how bad that was. So Mercedes made him back down and apologize.
Okay, also she got another. Dana is really, I thought Dana be asleep by now. She said the vax minimizes symptoms if you get COVID.
Yeah, it does that too. See, they don't know exactly what it does. They tell you that there have not been sufficient field trials and the stuff does not match medical protocols because it's an emergency thing. If you want to see a pretty good close approximation to what happened, watch this movie Contagion.
Okay, yeah.
It even said, and this has been 10 years ago, it even gets into, it originated in bats, infected pigs. This woman who was a food editor for a women's magazine, she was in China, and she shook hands with the chef who had just got through working on the pig but didn't wash him. He wiped them off on a apron and shook her hand. She got infected. She came back. She went to her side boyfriend, infected him. They both died, and her husband found out she had been infected, but it seemed he had a natural immunity, and then all of the stuff they went through and the protocols they busted up trying to get an effective emergency vaccine because it's so critical.
Well,
There's
Judge.
another thing I have to give you this perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anything about it in the press, but not long ago they excavated some of these mass graves in Europe and outside of London where they mass buried all these plague victims, right?
Yeah.
And they've been able to retrieve viable samples of the pathogen. They note that even though this horrible disease decimated so many human populations, it was not resistant to modern antibiotics. And actually, the COVID-19 virus is about, they rated it about now 10 times more dangerous than the bubonic plague in terms of what it could do. They said if they had had COVID-19 in the dark ages or the Middle Ages, instead of killing off a third or almost a half of a population in Europe and Africa and Asia when it went through, it would have killed off 90% of them. So it's all relative. So modern medicine has made a difference. So we've got several million people dead around the world, 2.9 million, something like that. 600,000 we've come up on in America versus a total of 18 million in 2019 by May 2019, from February 28, 1918 to May 1919. That was 18 million folk died in the United States on a population of about 103 to 106 million people. So that's rough. But we have modern medicine, so we only have 600 some thousand dead folk. But relaxing standards and opening stuff up, and with the new strains, it's probably going to hit about 1 million before May gets here.
Okay, but what about the fact? I mean, you said modern medicine, but what about the fact they got to give people Krispy Kreme donuts just to get them to take the vaccination? What that about? Diabetes
Well,
will get you before the damn COVID, ain't?
yeah, well, I know. You either want to understand the chances or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I went over with the health department here, was at Imani Church.
Okay.
They put it together pretty good. You had to register for it, so I had a confirmation number. And when I went there, 2 blocks before you got there, they had marked sheriff's department vehicles and one of these devices that's on wheels that has the lit up road signs. And
Mm-hmm.
they said COVID-19 vaccination, far right 2 lanes, and then they had cones. So you go in the 2 lanes, and then you went to 4 different lines in your car, and they checked your name off on the registration stuff. Then you went around to another line, which they split you up again, and you got these forms. Now, I thought it was going to take all day because I pulled up. We had to wait 8 minutes and move nowhere. But then what they did is they took 6 cars in 1 lane, moved them to the end of the shed, 6 cars in another lane, and so on. And then somebody came out to each car simultaneously and got the forms. And somebody came out simultaneously with the needles to each car. So every car got its injections at the same time. They kept you there for 3 minutes to see if you had an allergic reaction. And then you went outside and you waited, what was it? You waited 2 more minutes outside. Then you pulled around and you waited 10 minutes because they want you to make 15 minutes because they tell you you may have an allergic reaction in 15 minutes. If not, you're pretty cool, good to go. Something may happen. Now, I got mine. I didn't feel anything in my arm. I didn't show any symptoms of anything at all. I felt fine. They tell me the second one is the one that usually will start punching you around, but you know, I've had some things happen to me. It's just like, okay, can't be that bad. So I'd rather put up with that minor thing than something else. Now, I was in senior ROTC at UCLA. I was the brigade cadet commander. But anyway, um, cadet brigade commander. But we had to get these shots before we went to boot camp. So they had 6 doctors line or corpsmen, no, medics lined up on one side, 6 on the other, and you walk between 2 of them. And the one on the left gave you a shot in the left shoulder. The one on the right gave you a shot in the right shoulder. You stick to the next stage. You got 2 more, 2 more, 2 more. I think you got either 13 or 14 of them. And then 2 weeks later, we got this typhus and typhoid at the same time, one in each arm. They said that one was going to be rough. Get home or to your apartment or somewhere you can sit down, because in 2 hours it's going to get bad. And I know I went to the student union. I didn't think fat meat was greasy. I had a cup of coffee. I couldn't even drink it because I couldn't hold the cup. I was shaking so bad. But I just said, oh boy, I'd hate to get the disease. But that's just my attitude. It's like shit happens, you know.
Yeah, but when has the government did anything to benefit black folks for our good? When had they been really advocates for our good? I know of instances where they've been like compromising our health. Whether you even look at the history of gynecology, what they did to black women with no anesthesia.
I know.
They sterilizing
say,
black women. Sterilizing black women without their consent. And then you had the Tuskegee experiment. When has the government?
No, the Tuskegee experiment, they didn't infect anybody. They took people who were already infected and did not treat them. They wanted to see.
What about the Hippocratic oath, though? The do no harm.
No. See, this you have to. It's a different time. It was 100 some years ago that the first subject in the Tuskegee Institute experiment got infected. They didn't treat them. Also, you have to understand, they were feeding LSD to white folks, white professors, white soldiers, and they were jumping out of buildings because they wanted to see what LSD did.
Oh, yeah, CIA intervention. Yeah.
Yeah. See, this was a different climate. Okay. The climate now is not the same. For example, 1980, Ruby Wharton, who was my law partner at the time, that's A.C. Wharton's wife, and I were trying a case in a criminal court. It's me, her, and several other defense lawyers, and there were 4 co-defendants. So John P. Colton Sr., he's now dead. His son, John P. Colton Jr., was also a criminal court judge. But John P. Colton Sr., who was a distinguished Southern white gentleman, said, Mrs. Wharton, Mr. Brown, would you please approach the bench? General, if you wish to come along. So we get up there. Mrs. Wharton, Mr. Brown, is that a nigger you two are representing on trial with these 3 white men?
Wow.
You know, this is 1980. Okay, another case.
Wow.
Another case. Criminal court. I'm sitting there, and some kids come in from elementary school, and the judge says, boys and girls, the court is so happy to have you here to see how your government works. This is a code of law. Sitting in the box, we have 12 jurors, tried and true, who are peers of the defendants. And we have 2 alternates to take over if one of the regular jurors gets ill. Down at the far end of the table, we have General so-and-so, General so-and-so, General so-and-so. They represent the district attorney's office for Shelby County, Tennessee, and they represent the people. Sitting at this end, we have distinguished members of the defense bar. He called me Mr. Brown and all of this. And sitting behind these distinguished defense counsel, we have 4 niggers who stole cars from some white car dealers.
Wow. Jeez.
Now, that's 1980. So
12 years after King get killed in Memphis, this is going on in the courts.
Yeah. The reason I had such a battle with juvenile court is the first time I went down there in 1974. That low-down bastard, now dead and I hope rotten in hell, Kenneth Turner, who was a 6th grade dropout, was running this real circus. And I just had to start looking at the files because, you know, what was going on in there was just like, oh, man, no way. So this bailiff started shaking me, said, boy, the judge talking. He said, who the hell you calling boy? I'm an attorney, goddammit. I'm no boy. Well, the judge wants you. The judge said, nigger, don't you hear me talking to me? I said, who the hell do you call a nigger, you goddamn redneck cracker? You know, what did you call me? I said, I'm not on your docket. I'm a lawyer. You called me the N-word, fool. And see, nobody used it then. So that was 1974, and juvenile court had just been integrated 18 months before that. See, the black folk had to stay out in the hallway until they got through with the white folk business.
So what you tell me is that really ain't no justice, it's just us. Like, this is why we got this Black Lives
No, it's not just us. Let me put it this way. Let's take baseball.
Okay.
Some teams win the pennant, some finish in last place. The rules are the same for all teams, right?
Yeah, supposed to be.
Black folk just play by the same rules, but they keep finishing in last place. You know why?
Why?
Because your young black lawyers convince themselves it's all about money and not about cause. They forget that they live here too, and they need to make sure justice gets ensured. They don't speak up to two chicken shit and don't have balls. Okay?
You brought that up.
We don't sit on juries. Judge, even now, how do I get out of jury duty? I'm not going to tell you that. You need to sit your ass on jury duty. Well, man, no, you've been bitching to me enough in your goddamn trifling life about justice is just us. Get your ass down there and speak up when you're back in the jury room, and don't be afraid of those white folk and say, no, I don't think he's guilty.
Right.
You know? See, that's why it's just us. Next thing is black defendants make it so easy to be just us. See, we aren't exactly playing Robin Hood, robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. We are robbing our broke ass neighbors. We're murdering our neighbors. We're raping our neighbors, selling poison to our neighbors, burglarizing our neighbors, assaulting our neighbors, thugging out on our neighbors, and playing gangster on our neighbors. See, we make it easy. And the other thing is I used to get a malicious thrill out of jacking these fools up. I'm taking a recess waiting for the lawyers to get back so we can have this motion to suppress the so-called statement of the defendant, right? I'm on recess. I'm standing at the door. So if the lawyer's got anything, we can come up and I can tell the clerk, take care of it, whatever, or who to go see. And defendant is going, yay, man, I'm down with the cause, man. You know, like, hey, man, they try to make a move, man. They try to put this shit on me, man. You know, like, A.L.L, man. I was standing firm, man, for the colors, man. So when everybody gets back, we retire to my chambers to go view the tapes of the confession. This is what this dude's doing. Sir, you have a right to maintain. I don't care if I'm doing right. That is what I'm talking about, mama. Sir, you really, your mother can't be pregnant. I don't care. I just want to tell you what I'm talking about, mama. Sir, you really should have a lawyer. This is a serious. I don't want no lawyer. I just want my mama. Whatever y'all want you to let me see my mama. And then they be ratting out their own homies. It was Stomp doing it. That's who was doing it. It was Earl. And it was Short Dog. They was in there. It wasn't just me. And I'd come out. And yeah, he's trying to be defiant. And I say the defendant was interesting. The court observed the tape. And he was crying. They went through half a box of Kleenex because he kept having snot run down his face, tears, and the police, by the court's count, advised him that he needed a lawyer no less than 7 times. He insisted on waiving all rights. he kept crying for his mama, literally crying, saying he'd say anything if he just see his mama. And he told on, let's say, Stomp, Short Dog, Earl, and a number of people he implicated in this crime. And they look at him, what? See, I wasn't going to let him perpetrate that nonsense. See, that was so difficult. They talk a good game and talk about how they got done wrong, and you don't hear the whole story. Or how about this one? I used to be a part-time PD after I was the director of the city public defender's office back in the 70s.
Yes.
And I represented habitual offenders and major violators. So you're telling me, man, that you have an alibi. Yeah, man, I wasn't there. Well, there are 7 witnesses who put you on the scene. 4 of them even told the police where your mama lived. Well, they was lying. Who? And I gave them names. He lied because he was smoking a cigarette. He didn't see me because I was in the shadows behind the dumpster. See, he couldn't have seen me. Well, I thought you weren't there. Well, I wasn't because he didn't see me. He lied. And that other one, he was sitting on the hood of a car trying to smack on his babe, man. Like he couldn't have seen me either. See, and then you listen to it. They just putting the case on me.
Jeez.
But you said you weren't there. Well, see, I wasn't there if they didn't see me. You know, you understand what I'm saying, man? Like, yeah, okay. So you hear him whine to his friends about how they made a case on him when they didn't have one.
Right.
You see, that's just crazy because that's what you're getting. They're giving you some bull. And Richard Pryor said it the best way I've ever heard. Remember when he did that comedy movie, Silver Bullet, the Train, or whatever it was? And he was doing this joke album, and he was talking about his experience when not Silver Bullet, it was with the star in that train, where they were doing this thing where they were wrongly convicted and they were in a penitentiary. And he was saying, yeah, man, I got to meet all the brothers in the penitentiary, man. And, you know, we talked, man, and hung out, you know, to set the atmosphere, all of that. I got one thing to say. After talking to those folk in there, thank God they got penitentiaries. You know, some of my clients, I would not. I mean, I always gave them my best in defense. But some of my clients, you don't want walking around on the streets because you may have daughters and granddaughters and sisters and aunts and grandparents and mamas and co-workers. You don't want them out there. Yeah. So when you say just us, we kind of make it just us because you could get more black folk paying attention from kindergarten through 12th grade and get through college and stop playing bid whisk and trying to gangster your way through college and not take a stand on anything and not pay attention and worrying about the latest fashion so you could go on and go to law school. And when you went to law school, get gross and balls if you don't already have them so you'd get out and do the right thing. See, like right here, Memphis, Shelby County is about 70-some% black. So how the hell are you going to wind up with a jury pool where you can't get black jurors unless the jurors are excluding themselves? So you have black jury for commissioner. You have black deputies. You got black lawyers. You got most of your courtroom clerks are black. You go down there and you get up on the 5th, 6th, and 7th floor, and most of the people you see working are black or white. It's about 50-50. It even goes to COVID-19. When you go get these shots, most of the nurses and the personnel are black. They're not white. Most of the doctors are black. So that would get into that thing where you say the black folk are complicit in their own bad thing. The black doctors are trying to poison the black patients.
I mean, Eunice Rivers was the head nurse on Tuskegee Experience. She was a black woman that went to Tuskegee.
I'm saying that, but black. I'm saying we have that. And we are usually our worst enemy, but you would have to make all of these black folk complicit, not just the one or two. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that woman, I'm somewhat familiar with that. Her justification was all these godless men shouldn't have been catting around. They should have been in church and they wouldn't have caught it. And the Lord was punishing. So she was trying to go at this like so
Well,
many of us do, with
yeah,
some sense of being righteous.
and she paid for their funerals too, which is ironic. She had her own little GoFundMe thing back in the day, paying for their funerals. And her daddy was a black man that saved money for her to go to college. This was ironic. I mean, she had no respect for black men, but her father was a good black man.
Yeah, well, see, that's what black women are taught, to disrespect black men because they can't protect you. None. They're all this, they're all that. They run around, all this, all that. And, you know, they're evil and blah, 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 blah. You know, we do a lot of bad things to ourselves. And we need unity, but there's a caveat to unity. Most of the people that would want to unify with you are traitors, and they're going to be snitches and informants to somebody's agency to try and break up what you do. And that is the danger, by the way, with this warrantless search that the Biden administration is pushing. That is the thing that is of grave danger with this Asian Protection Act. There are already laws on the books that protect everybody. So why do you have to have a specific set of laws for a specific set of people that once you put in place, because they're more draconian than the regular laws, could be used for oppression of other people? But black folk also need to pay more attention to who's on the ballot for judges. You see, the mayor, the congressman, city councilman, they can't put you in jail, they can't lock you up, set bond or deny bond. They can't sentence you, they can't grant a divorce, deny the divorce, set child support, set spousal support, deal with custody, but your judges can. And what we do in our community is we wait till election day, get in line and collect 3 or 4 of these handout sample ballots. And we say, okay, this guy's on 3 of them, this guy's on 2. So I'll vote for the one that's on 3, and the one that's on 3 might be an ass. Like for years, this guy named Joe McCarty got the black bloc vote every time because he paid a lot of money to all of the black politicians to put him on the ballot, their ballots. This judge had been chairman of the White Citizens Council. He had been Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan around here. He was a racist. He was an orphan. He was a mentally deranged person, and I had to issue a habeas corpus on his own granddaughter to get her out of jail when he locked up his own granddaughter because she was the acting clerk in my courtroom and had to take a jury verdict, and he wanted her to come down and fill in for some of his clerks who had the flu. So I sent one of my deputies down there, and this fool's got his own granddaughter jacked up in front of the whole courtroom and locked her up for 10 days. So I granted a habeas corpus and let her out. And I got him the next day and called him all kinds of SOBs. You know, but you see, he kept getting the black bloc vote. Nobody knew this. And you have to pay attention to the people who have impacts that you will feel. And that's why justice looks like just us, because we opt out of participating, or if we participate, we opted out of the proper preparation. We didn't do the push-ups, so to speak. We didn't do the sit-ups. We didn't do the laps, so we're not prepared. And most crucially, I don't care whether you're practicing law or anything else, you still got to have balls and testosterone and have the nerve to do what you need to do instead of being a punk coward. Around here, we needed a lawyer over in my area. Homeowners around here, we agreed that we'd have $1.5 million cap on the fee that we wanted to pay the lawyer. But we had sense enough not to tell them this, and we were trying to deal with the Germantown city government for inappropriately granting zoning variances so somebody could develop a housing complex and use a school to be built and use it as a draw and violate all kinds of ordinances. And we couldn't get a lawyer, white one, and they said, "Well, Judge, maybe you got a black lawyer you can recommend." I said, "I really don't know." So we went through a bunch of them. They were afraid to take on Germantown. It's like, what's wrong with you? That's how you get a rep as a lawyer. That's how you make big money, fool. And by the way, we weren't about to pay you some chicken change, so you just blew it.
Oh yeah, in the movie, I'm glad we got a very educated chat, very opinionated. They said that movie with Richard Pryor was Silver Streak. That's the movie,
Silver Streak, that's
Yeah.
it.
And
That
also
the white star in that
Gene
one.
Wilder.
Wilder was in it where they got sent to jail because they got framed and falsely convicted. Wilder, that's what I was trying to think of.
Gene
Silver
Wilder.
Streak,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, I got to tell you, because you talk about the lawyers, the lack of lawyers being really advocates for the people. But it was Tamir Rice's mom that complained about these Black Lives Matter people, and also the lawyers not representing the interests of the people, but more interested in securing a plea bargain or settlement in the
Yeah.
bed. What's your
Let's
take
talk
on
about settlements.
that? Mm-hmm.
Willie Gary is a black lawyer. He's
Mm-hmm.
semi-retired. Willie Gary holds the record for the largest sustained jury verdict in American history. It's almost 40 years ago. It's $750 million
Wow.
because some patrons of various funeral homes got upset because the bodies weren't treated right. That's $750 million 40 years ago, which would be about $2 billion or something now. That was for dead bodies, okay? 2011, the people that did So You Want to Be a Millionaire sued ABC and Disney, and the Ninth Circuit awarded them $560 million. Okay, that was for a contract breach. The family for Floyd got 27 million. As a dead man brutalized by the police. And on the other hand, 27 million is a long way from 580 million because they breached a contract of somebody at ABC and Walt Disney. All right. 750 million is a hell of a lot away 40 years ago from what you got with Breonna Taylor and Floyd. So, how many trials have lawyers had who settled these cases? See, I'll give you a little experience. There's a lawyer now deceased. He's a great lawyer, but when he was brand new, I mentored him, Sam Perkins. Sam had never tried a case before, and he had a case up in, Division One, Judge Wyman. And he ran into me when I was down in General Sessions. This is when I was practicing law. It's been 35 years ago. And he said, "Joe, what in the hell am I going to do, man? They're offering my client 10 years. He ain't going to take that." He said he didn't do anything. "What am I going to do?" I said, "Well, what's going on?" He explained it to me. I said, "Well, here's what you go up and tell him. Tell him this." So he came down. They dropped the offer to 8 years, but my client still doesn't want it. I said, "Well, tell you what, you tell them that if you can't work it out, Joe Brown's going to come up there." So he came running back down. He dropped it down to 5, Joe. I said, "Tell him that's not enough." So I said, "Tell Judge Wyman I'll be up there and I'll help you try the case. It's set for trial today." So I went up there. I said, "Judge Wyman, I'm going to be enrolled to help Mr. Perkins try this case." He said, "Well, Mr. Brown, will you need a reset to prepare?" I said, "No, sir. We're ready to go today." Said, "If it pleases the court, I have no idea when you're breaking for lunch, but when you come back, could you have the jury foreman jury commissioner bring over about 75 or so?" So that's fine, Mr. Brown, by 1:30. I said, "I'll be up here, Your Honor." So I show back up. They dropped the offer down to 2 years. No deal. The jury comes over. I'm saying, "Ready, let's go." They said, "Let's talk, let's talk." I said, "Well, what are you offering?" So we'll just drop the charges. Null price. So I said, "I tell you what, I want you to add cost." Sam didn't know why. Why you want a mad cost? Because jeopardy attaches and they can't bring it back up. So you see, in other words, Sam hadn't tried any cases, but later he did and became a great trial lawyer. He got great offers. So if you've never tried a case, you get lousy offers because it's like, okay, screw you, take it or leave it. But if you kick ass in a trial, they know they really have to work. So they start dropping the cases down in terms of the offer for your defendant, or if it's a civil matter, they start ramping it up so they don't lose money on the deal. And instead of $27 million, you would have gotten 70 something. Hell, that's 150, 150, $200 million case. Damn, they gave some dissatisfied producers and directors, a handful of them, $580 million because Walt Disney and ABC messed up, or because the funeral home messed up 40 years ago with some dead bodies. The plaintiffs got 750 million. Now you got somebody that was mistreated and done wrong at police hands and killed, and you get 27 million or 13 million. See, that isn't how it works.
Oh, and now people, these people are very educated. These folks passionate about Richard Pryor, Judge. I tell you, these people, they just they said a lot of other things. They're very opinionated. They're interested. Your friend Gavin Richard, he said Silver Streak was the one about the train. Stir Crazy was the one where they went to prison.
Stir Crazy.
Directed that. You mentioned both of them. You referenced the train and the penitentiary thing.
Yeah, Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor.
Yeah, they like Ebony and Ivory. But people they concern about basically what you saying. You kind of support him with Tamir Rice's mom is saying that they don't know the law. Like she's saying Ben Crump didn't know the laws of Ohio. And
I'm not mentioning any names, but that is a case that should have gone to trial.
Okay. What do you think would have been the verdict? What would have happened if it went to trial?
$250 million.
And she only got a couple. I don't think she got maybe about 5 million.
Yeah. Which one are you talking about? Breonna Taylor, or are you talking about Floyd?
Well, I was talking about actually Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old that got killed about.
Oh, well, yeah. That one is one of those cases that might have gone to trial. See, you have juries that are sensitized to them now. Like, for example, the same case you try in Nashville would get you 4 times as much money as you get in Memphis. Everybody in Memphis tends to be broke, so they think in small amounts. But if the same case was tried up in Nashville, they make more money on average up there. You get a much bigger verdict, but you can't pick the jurisdiction. You got to try it where it's at.
Irony, though, to say, Memphis is systemic engineered poverty, but you got a lot of millionaires that live in Memphis, though.
Well, Memphis has,
and Fortune 500 companies are headquartered.
Here's the thing about Memphis.
AutoZone.
Here's the thing about Tennessee.
Okay.
Tennessee is number 4 in the nation per capita in millionaires.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Memphis is a very interesting city. One part of Memphis has one of the highest per capita incomes in the nation, and the other part has one of the lowest. See, and the middle class, black and white, is neglected in Memphis.
Oh, you breaking up a little bit, Judge. What you say was the last part you said? Oh, now we're talking about you breaking up.
What I said was Memphis is interesting because one part of it has one of the highest per capita incomes in the United States, and the other part of it has one of the lowest in the United States. And there are very few people in between the top and bottom in Memphis. There is practically nothing that is done for the middle class, black or white, in Memphis. Either you get the gravy at the top or you get absolutely nothing at the bottom.
Hey, Joe, I don't know what's going on. Like, you breaking up. I don't know. They playing with your Hey, should we start talking about this stuff? It's all breaking up now.
That might be the atmosphere. Is that better?
No, it sounds different. It's nice, so like they cartoon your voice. Well, maybe we'll have the judge come back. That's kind of weird. We start talking about some real stuff, some heavy stuff with the economics and the social, economic, political situation in Memphis, and all of a sudden he sounds like Papa Smurf. I don't know what's going on, people. That what happens doing live shows. Things will happen. It'll get lively. But I see y'all in the chat right now. You know, the judge is the judge. He's entitled to his opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion. And he's his own person. And like I tell y'all, y'all need to stop looking at people to be y'all leaders, man. Be your own leader. You better trust your own self when it comes to your health and wealth. Like I take a lot of supplements. I drink a lot of water. I work out. You are the steward of your own health. You can't put that on nobody else. I don't trust these doctors. I have loved ones who were told they had breast cancer, then I had breast cancer, and it was cut up like a steak just because of the insurance money. I don't know. Me folks are not really ethical, man. Or they swore allegiance to something else besides preserving life. Because you got a system that's okay with killing babies before they get here. And what the heck? People calling me. I don't know who these people are, but this is like 1 something in the morning here. I don't answer strong on phone calls with people I don't know. I'm a black person, so that's the reason why we don't answer phone calls with people we don't know. But it doesn't invalidate what the judge is saying on a lot of different things. He's entitled to his opinion, just like you are. I'm not going to have no side conversations with a lot of you people. I'm not going to ever meet a lot of y'all, and that's fine with me. But what we do a service. Like I said, we have a disclaimer. We don't endorse anybody's point of view, but we respect their right to say what's on their mind. And our job is to amplify what they're saying. Normally don't hear it in certain venues. It's popular. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. You know, people say, well, Britta Ron's an agent. No, I'm not an agent of a free thinking, an agent of do for self. That's what I'm an agent in. So I don't know if judge going to be able to get back in. Got man, I don't know. I want to answer this phone, man. Who the hell calling me? I think about calling some of y'all. I'll be reading y'all emails. I don't want to. Yeah, hello. Peace. Who's this? All right, Elevation. How you do? I see you live in the chat right now. What's up? No, it's not set up for 7 phone call, but I'm gonna put you on speakerphone, see if it works out. Okay, you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. You Elevation out live from the chat, right?
That's correct.
All right, how you doing tonight, man? Thanks for listening and for sharing your opinion. So what's up? Tell us. Let us know. We're gonna amplify you.
Yes, sir. So regarding Judge Joe Brown, I'm not convinced that actually was Judge Joe Brown. This might sound kind of funny, right? But a couple of weeks ago, you had a similar situation with Tom Cruise. It's called a deep fake.
Okay.
And the reason why you know what deep fake is. I'm not going to that.
Well, you gonna explain. You make it short for us, like help us understand, because we got an audience that may not be aware of what you're talking about.
Deep fake is a technology that allows one person to mimic the face, the movements, and the voice of another person.
Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on, brother. Out loud. Wait a minute. Judge, you back? Can you hear us?
I'm back.
Yeah, I got a
I guess.
Yeah, I got a brother on here, brother A.L.L. He's been listening, and he's not necessarily agreeing with everything you saying in our conversation, but he want to share some information with the people, and I'll give you a chance to respond. Are you good with that?
Go ahead.
All right, brother A.L.L. Continue.
So, from what I know, as far as on the outside looking in about Judge Joe Brown, he's very consistent in his ideology, his perspectives, and such. So, what really struck me in the wrong way is earlier when you were talking about the Tuskegee experiment, his counterpoint to that was that it's different than what's going on now because the people already had syphilis. That's not. They were not given syphilis because the white man told us. So that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Then he was advocating for the taking of vaccines for people with so-called preconditions or pre-existing conditions. even though it has a 99.95% survival rate overall. And it skipped over normal vaccine testing with a parallel testing between animals and humans. So it's not really adding up. And I know this brother's better than that, so this got to be an imposter. And I'm kind of kidding, but not really. Is this really Judge Joe Brown?
Judge, you ever hear that? Can you hear all that?
I heard it. It's me. You know me personally. We've had lunch together, hung out together. It's me. And let me just say this. I don't buy into bullshit. I'll be candid. I'll break it down. You can listen to all this woke bullshit you want to. You can take the goddamn vaccine or not. I just know 19 people personally who are dead of it and 23 who've been infected but recovered. Somebody was a secretary of mine who said the same thing you did. She got out of the hospital after 11 days and her boyfriend's been in there for 27. Somebody else that is an on-air personality said the same thing. He was in hospital for 48 days recovering from it, and he's only 34 years old. There ain't nothing wrong with him before he went in. Tuskegee experiment, for your edification, 50-some damn years ago, we had launched a study that UCLA BSU did. We actually went to Tuskegee, and we looked at the data and everything. That's why I'm telling you that these people were already infected. They were not treated, and not treating them is evil, in my opinion. That's like bringing over these Nazi and Japanese scientists and medical people after World War II so you can learn what they found out studying somebody. Now, all bullshit aside, you do what the fuck you want to do, but the bottom line is it's dangerous, and I'm not buying what anybody reads on Crying Negro Network or hears, and it always amazes me that people rely for their information on these bullshit mainstream media stations that have an agenda, and they don't read for themselves. If you want to find out what's going on, all of these researchers publish for peer review. Otherwise, they don't get the grants, they don't get paid, and you can get the stuff published for peer review that will tell you what they have, what they don't have, what needs to be discovered, what already is discovered, what they think is weak, and peers of theirs comment on it. That's how science advances. I happen to have had a minor at UCLA. It was known as vertebrate paleontology, with a specialty in the role of pathogens and extinction events and evolution. So I can read all of the gene code stuff. I know how to read that. A lot of people don't. They rely on somebody else. Now, you can go get it if you want it. I'm just saying that it's a matter of opinion. It's America. They can't force you to get it. But I'm not going to support somebody not getting it because I know better.
So,
now,
Judge,
I'm telling you my experience over the last 70 years in life and what that means, and you can take it or leave it. You can rely on 99% recover, which they don't. And even if you do have 99% recovery, a lot of people are flat out miserable suffering from it. So, yeah.
okay, Judge. Now, so I want you to clarify because people getting confused in the chat. You saying that 19 people died from COVID and not the vaccine?
I'm saying 19 people I know died from it.
From COVID, right?
Yes.
Not
Now, I said this.
Yeah.
They might have been at risk. They might have been compromised, but had they not caught it, somebody would still have grandmama and granddad around, aunt, uncle, mother, father, brother, sister, daughter, granddaughter, neighbor, co-worker, or somebody they knew, friend, girl, or whatever it may be.
Okay,
now,
brother, I'm about to move on.
That's what the deal is. You take your chances, and part of it is life is dangerous, and to me, it's a small risk, and I'll take it because I don't see any need to go around and go through being a masochist and saying I want some pain, I want some suffering, I want to vomit, I want to throw up, I want to be in a situation where I can't breathe. Already been there 4 years ago with that one for something else.
Okay,
so
Judge.
That was awful.
So I got another problem. I believe there's a person calling in for you. Yeah, this is Cincinnati. What's up?
Yes, sir. Just giving you a call. I heard the last caller, but I ain't gonna touch on that stuff the dude was talking about. That was a little out of pocket, but
you can hear him. Wait a minute. You can hear him, Judge. Can you hear him?
Yeah, he said he was a little out of pocket. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. I was making sure.
Yeah, he's still out of pocket. But what I wanted to ask Joe Brown about is, did you do some work on the Wayne Williams case?
That's the Atlanta child murders case now in Atlanta, Judge. Wayne Williams, the black dude.
You mean the guy they caught from the rug fibers on the victims and stuff like?
Yeah.
I know about that. We did some research on it. No, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I consulted with some lawyers on that when they were doing the defense indirectly. No, I wasn't involved on that one directly.
Okay. I was gonna ask you because I saw. I think is her name Bottoms, the mayor.
Yeah, Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Okay, right. And I think I heard that she was reopening that case.
Yes.
Maybe a month or two back.
It wouldn't hurt to open it. They have modern technology. I wasn't exactly satisfied with their conclusions on what they had. Now, I say that in the context of I trained the public defender's capital defense team. That's when they ask for death penalties, they try it. And Tennessee has a rule on appointed counsel that you cannot be appointed to represent somebody as first chair defense counsel if you haven't had so many second chair jury trials, and you can't be one of those if you haven't tried murder, robberies, rapes, burglaries, and stuff like that. So I used to fill in first and second chair. So I had 42 murder cases I tried as a lawyer where the death penalty was demanded and others where the death penalty wasn't. And I did get the youngest person in the world off death row. That was Ron Ward down in Arkansas. He was 15 for 2 weeks on the day of his execution. And we got to stay 23 minutes before they executed him.
Wow.
They didn't have cell phones, and they had a bank of 20 phones with red lights on them in this room. Me, local counsel, and the warden were down there, and the assistant warden. And 2 phones ran at the same time. I picked up one. The warden picked up one. The governor was on the line that the warden had, and that was Bill Clinton, and the clerk of the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice was on the other one. So he said we're calling it off. The governor said we're calling off state execution, and me and the warden swapped phones, and everybody listened in on the line. So they called it off. He'd been 15 2 weeks. So yeah, I filed if you want to hear about the death penalty, just briefly, in Arkansas, you have to have a printed brief. And it has to be hard bound, so it basically looks like a textbook, but this one was 12,483 pages long, printed like a textbook. It looked like a dictionary. And I paid for that out of my own pocket. And one of the interesting things is that Arkansas held the distinction for the youngest person executed in the 20th century. This person was arrested for shoplifting at a Woolworth 5 and Dime on Monday, taken to trial on Wednesday, and hung on Friday. And it was a 10-year-old black girl.
What's her name, Judge? What's her name?
I don't remember. Look,
let me say George Steeney was.
Let me say something about this. I deliberately don't remember names because Black history is always taught as a collection of names and dates. But that is essentially irrelevant to the study of history. What's important is the significance. Now, that is what's important. It was a 10-year-old black girl. She was tried, convicted, and hung within 1 week.
Yeah, so there was like some impromptu random stuff, but I want to get back to what you were saying. Well, he was rudely interrupted by the powers that be, by the NSA or whatever, the CIA, whatever. about the socioeconomic condition of Memphis, why it's like that, the engineer poverty, and also.
Okay, well, what happens is Memphis has a pretty high income that comes into the city.
Mm-hmm.
But the way things work around Memphis, though, that income is not used to subsidize middle class business or activity or small businesses. It goes to the select few, and the city pays them for use of their land, pays them to build structures, and lets them operate the structures that the city is paid for, and give the city 4% of the net, if any, which really seldom comes up to anything, because a smart businessman can zero out the income with expenses and income, business expense, losses, et cetera, et cetera. So the city effectively builds a lot of people their businesses instead of them putting their own money up. That eats up a lot of money. Too much money goes under the table to city councilmen and county commissioners. So they do things that they ought not do, and nobody holds them to account. Every now and then you have a Tennessee Waltz sting operation and they go to jail. Some of them really should go to jail, because some of the things some of them have done are so low life that it is really bad for the constituents. There was one city councilman who was notorious for charging his constituents $250 a pop 30 some years ago to talk to him. There was another one who was over a certain agency that dispensed loans, business loans, but he always required that the applicant take out double what he asked for and give half to him, and then they'd have problems meeting the larger note. So we've got that kind of thing out there. So what you have in Memphis is, one part of Memphis has one of the highest per capita incomes in the United States, and another significantly large part of it has one of the lowest. The middle class is completely neglected. If you look at the congressman from the 9th district that covers most of Memphis, Steve Cohen, if you look at his record, there's nothing for the middle class in there. There's for those upper reaches in terms of construction and building projects and development projects. There's a lot of stuff for gay rights in there that he has supported, but nothing for the black or white middle class. There's some poverty level frou-frou that doesn't bring much money in. That was the same with Harold Ford Jr. and Harold Ford Sr. So we have been short shifted, and that's just the way politics works. You get some broke ass folk get into politics and they want to come rich off of the politics. The way it works is, well, it used to, somebody was a deacon or a rabbi, and when they had appreciation day, there was a very large cash contribution that was directed toward the individual in question. That was the buy-off. Was one, somebody had a supply store, and he would get these large orders from the city that he didn't have to deliver on. You see, that's the way it works. There was a corner down here when you went across the A.W. Willis Bridge 34 years ago, 32 years ago, at that Mud Island development. The city sold that corner to a developer for $14,000. Now, why are you selling a corner to somebody? Okay, less than 90 days later, the city bought it back from him for $6.8 million, and he split the money. By state and local law, if you build a development, housing development with a certain density, the roads have to have a minimum width. Okay, that is supposed to be the obligation of the developer. He's supposed to pay for the road. He's supposed to donate his land to make the road. But what the city did is they exercised eminent domain, paid the developer for the land, and then built it themselves, which was extra money to the people. Now that corner is a roundabout instead of a right-hand stop sign. And it used to, once they bought it back, they built a yield sign going right, but now it's a roundabout. See, that kind of thing. A Beale Street landing right there at the foot of Beale Street and Riverside Drive, 2014, the taxpayers paid $35 million to build a large catfish jungle gym, gift shop, bar, and grill. And the guy was supposed to pay the city $1 cash rent for the premises and 4% of his net, but he bailed and the city got stuck with it, and they cannot operate a bar. So we got stuck with a lot of money out of pocket. $85 million for that pyramid. That was supposed to be on the south end of the city where the Rivermont is right now, Rivermark. And it was supposed to be the same size dimensionally as the ancient Cheops pyramid in Memphis, Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, certain people, Turley, had some property down there, downtown, 7 feet below the river level, and they built it down there on his property, so they had to pay him rent. And it's half the size it was supposed to be. The acoustics are horrible.
Yeah.
It cost the taxpayers $85 million. So what we did is we gave it to Bass Pro, who has one of the worst equal employment opportunity records in the country. They were supposed to hire 126 employees. They put the elevators that were originally designed in opposite corners of the pyramid to go up to a restaurant at the top. They get free advertisement. The taxpayers got one dime out of it, and we don't get anything because smart businesses zero out the income, so they got a net zero. So that's what we get out of stuff like that, and that's why Memphis is so flat broke when it comes time to paying out to people. Harold Collins, city councilman down there, we used to call him Driving Miss Daisy because he always drove this crooked DA down here, Amy Wyrick. So Bill Collins attacked a good brother who had an arrangement where for 10% on the dollar, he collected for city court. That's Handel Durham attorney. So Collins attacked him, and it turned out that there were 20 entities that had these collection agreements with the city. Handel Durham was the only black contractor. He got 10% on the dollar, and the white ones were getting 20%. They've got this thing right now, which is a charade. They've got 28,000 untested rape kits that the DA's office doesn't want tested. They have made arrangements where they pay Ronnie Coleman $700-some thousand to supposedly vet these cases. City council agreed to pay this New York firm $7.2 million, and they had to test or to complete the kits and evaluate them. It's supposed to take 5 more years, but TBI offers to come in and do all of them in a month for free. See, that kind of scam going on. That's where the money goes, and that's one of the reasons Memphis has such a discrepancy. See, you've got the Mississippi River down here, and there's a thing called hydroelectric power. You don't need to pay a dam or build a dam because there's a mighty Mississippi. You can put hydroelectric generators down in that current on the Memphis side, put up baffles to block debris and large fish and stuff from getting swept up in there. Once it's built, the only expense you have would be maintenance. You get free, clean energy. You don't need oil. You could bring in all sorts of industry. You've got room to expand. There's no inversion layer, so you don't have to worry about smog. You could put people to work, not for $15 an hour minimum wage, but for $90, $95, $110 an hour for skilled labor and working in factories and in development of a lot of things that could be put in place right now. High tech. See, this is high tech over there on Mud Island. That was a prime nuclear target if we ever had World War III. Why? Because the U.S. Navy has the nuclear submarine propeller balancing station over there. They balance and trim all of the propellers for nuclear submarines. So we've got stuff here we don't even know about. Memphis International Airport has the highest commercial tonnage in the whole world. Not passenger, but commercial tonnage.
Mm-hmm.
Hong Kong is in second place, and it's less than half of the commercial tonnage that comes through Memphis. Why? Because the Mississippi River is crossed by the main transcontinental highway, I-40. Everything's got to wind up in Memphis if it's shipped nationally or in North America, Canada, Mexico, U.S. So it could come directly here, directly from Europe on barges that are brought across the Atlantic on barge transports. The transport would dock at the port of New Orleans. The barges would be floated out, and you get a tow from New Orleans up here. It takes about 30 days, and they don't run through customs until they get to President's Island, where the world's largest barge unloading facility is located. Now, Europe and East Europe and the Mediterranean area and North Africa are trying to get in on that, but Memphis keeps blocking it. So the big fish in the medium pond don't become small fish in a very large pond. That is bad, because what they have to do is put it on these containers that in containers in Europe, put them on container carrying trucks, run it under the English Channel to an English seaport, ship it across the North Atlantic when the weather is bad, get to the port of New York, Boston, Baltimore, and you suffer pilferage from the mob. You have to run it through customs. You have to pay the storage and pay for transshipment to get it out of those off the dock and on a train to get it to Memphis. And otherwise, you could bring it straight here. And nobody is developing this, and nobody seems to have had a clue about using the possibilities for hydroelectric power that would drop everybody's energy bill way, way down. It would bring in industry, transportation, improve employment, improve education, all kinds of things. But nobody's interested because they want to become well-to-do by taking stuff under the table while they're sitting down there supposedly representing the people, which they don't. Now, not all of them are crooked, but a lot of them.
Enough of them
are. And look at the voting machines.
Yeah.
The Justice Department threatened to sue these county commissioners if they did not put these voting machines, buy these voting machines that they had given them the money in 2008 to buy. Well, it turns out the county commissioners authorized the purchase, so they bought them new machines, but they've been sitting in the warehouse for 4 election cycles using the old and hacked machines. That's county and state and local primary and main election. And that is federal primary and main election using machines that the Justice Department found back in 2004 were so hacked that you couldn't have an election. You had selection. So, see, nobody's done anything about that. Why? Because to get bribed. Ed Ford got down there and said, yeah, he got money to go along with authorizing that pipeline. Steve Cohen, the congressman, went along with, he got some too. And he hooked up with the other Cohen that worked for Trump. And they had already given him some Exxon stock that ramped up greatly in value because of the buyout of Exxon interest in California. I mean, hey, you know, that's the way they do it. It's crooked city.
Yeah. Now, Judge, I thought that Memphis was the #1 cargo airport for a long time, but Hong Kong is #1 now. We #2. So it's been reversed.
Well, I mean, that's because that's fallen down in the last 2 or 3 years. That's because we have neglected it. This mayor you've got in right now is a jerk for the city, and the same one with the county. He would know business if it slapped him upside his head. Either one of them upside their fool
high
heads.
school with Lee Harris too. He was an upperclassman. You know, it's interesting way
Lee Harris is a jerk.
Judge, I gotta ask you. I'm gonna
let me get to say this. I did a bunch of pro bono stuff just to do good, to give back. So he and his wife have been getting a full professor's salary for 15 years. They don't work but 15 hours a week. And the law school encourages the professors to do pro bono work. He hadn't done one damn pro bono case in that whole time to help out the people in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
He's a jerk. And he wants to make sure that the guns are taken out of the good citizens' hands. And we do have a bad crime problem. And
but is it tied to the fact that we're not helping people to be economically successful, like be able to move upward, or
well, if somebody's flat broke, busted, they have to sustain themselves. What the hell you think they're gonna do? Starve?
Right. That's just human nature. I mean, that's just natural. I mean, self-preservation.
And Strickland, his idea of cutting back on crime is to buy more laptops so the kids can play video games, not learn, but play video games.
Not even learn STEM, not do STEM, but just play video games. Huh?
Yeah, I see. That's bankrupt.
Well, just I gotta ask you. I know I don't want to keep you. I know you want to look at the Hamilton thing in several hours.
That's some hours from now. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, but I want to ask you like a hot topic. People like, you know how people are programmed, but I got to get your take on. I know you talked about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but before you get to that, what about your take on Deshaun Watson, the quarterback down in Houston, with all these civil cases about sexual assault? You know, the football.
I frankly don't give a damn. Wait until the outcome of whatever proceedings have been filed, and then let's comment on it. Because, see, I come from an era where they would just say cases have been filed alleging so and so and so. That's it. Now they got to speculate. Tommy, what do you think happened? Well, Al, maybe this is what went on. Well, Tommy, how about this? No, I didn't ask your dumb, uneducated ass to give me speculation. Just report the goddamn facts that somebody got charged. These are the allegations. Because I know more about it than you, and the average person is smarter and not a jackass just spending the entirety of their adult life trying to deal with make-believe. And your ass is not a reporter. You read what's scrolling across the camera lens that the audience can't see, that some 23-year-old sitting in the newsroom wrote up for you, and you don't see until you sit down and cold turkey look at it. See, that's not reporting.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I don't know, and I don't want to speculate on it because, first off, it's soap opera bullshit. Second off, let's see what happens. And hell, if you want to get into entertainment, let's go Star Wars. Padawan, patience is a great virtue.
What about the fact that they filed in civil cases instead of going to criminal? Why weren't the police involved from the get-go?
Because they couldn't prove anything. There's a lower standard of proof in the civil matter, and somebody wants money.
So now, it really, yeah.
I just say this. Okay, Dana is a massage therapist. She broke it down the other night pretty well. I was on her show. And the deal is they have an obligation to report that. So he's hiring them to come over to his house, and nobody reports this.
Right.
Is this another one of these Gloria Allred projections where she had a little bit too much wine, her and her daughter, at an Emmy party one time, and she was bragging about how she extorted all these guys by threatening to file these actions? And she and her lesbian daughter go and talk to these women who are feeling bad about themselves and get convinced it's all these evil men that are doing you wrong. Okay, fine, maybe. But let's see what happens. I got more important things to do than to worry about that.
Yeah, it's like it's an inside job because the lawyer for the women, he is next door neighbors to the owner family of the Houston Texans. So it's like it's a vendetta because he want to get out of Houston. He's trying to get out the Texans organizations, the son Watson, and trying to get traded. But that's not. Let's move on to like
one comment on that. 2,043 years ago, Julius Caesar said when Mark Antony asked him what he thought the Roman mob was going to think about him becoming dictator for life, he said, give them bread and circuses and they won't care. The Latin is Donne pane excelsior. That's circuses entertainment, and this is a bread and circus episode.
Definitely, you definitely on point on with that, Judge. Also, Breonna Taylor, it should have went to trial. That should have been tried in court. The Breonna Taylor situation.
Actually, that wasn't so bad to settle. Let me tell you why. All of the hype aside, this is the law. This castle doctrine that so many woke black folk like to attack because that sissified Anderson Cooper on CNN Crying Negro Network did years ago when they were talking about Trayvon Martin getting killed. And by the way, castle doctrine had absolutely nothing to do with Trayvon Martin's case because it didn't take place in a house. Well, when the cops got the warrant, they broke in after initial knock to Breonna Taylor's apartment. Her new boyfriend was staying there, and he shot at them. Now, you noticed he's not on trial because under the castle doctrine, what he did was legal. So a black man shot at cops who were kicking down his door, and he's not on trial. He's free to go. The cops had the same right of self-defense that anybody else has. So when they come in there with a legitimate, not search warrant, but arrest warrant, they get shot at, they shoot back. They miss the guy that's shooting at them under the castle doctrine. The bullets go through the wall. Breonna Taylor sleeping on the other side. She gets hit 7 times. That's not crime. That's negligence. Not on behalf of anybody that was on the raid. The negligence is on behalf of the police department because they did not notify the raid team that they had taken the individual who was wanted in custody. Breonna Taylor did something that I used to tell women about. Check who you associate with. Your nice thug boyfriend can get you killed. She worked for the correctional department of her state, but she was letting her thug, wanted criminal boyfriend use her phone number to get messages and use her address to get mail, which is why they went by there. So she, to an extent, set herself up for that.
You talking about that's an ex, not the current one who was
not the current. That was the ex they were looking for. See, ladies, stop dealing with these damn thugs because you will get yourself between a rock and a hard place. I don't know how many cases. Well, I didn't do it, but why were you letting him? He just got out the damn penitentiary for the 3rd time. Why were you letting him use your place? Well, I didn't know he was storing drugs. Well, what the hell? That's your fault.
You know, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about a classmate of mine. He was an upperclassman, but I learned that like maybe several years ago, he was set up by a woman, and got killed. I mean, I was like, why is that people do that? I mean, like, it's like she was a good looking woman, but she's in prison for a long time now.
Yeah. But see, all kinds of stuff happens when you got a relationship going. She got a new boyfriend staying there. Why is she letting the old one use the place for mail and use her phone number for messages? And she's in the Department of Corrections. Works for them.
That's interesting.
See, that is a bad move on her part. It was a bad move not telling that raid team that the warrant had been served. The guy did what he thought was right. He fired a shot under the castle doctrine. They had the right of self-defense. Even an ordinary citizen would have had that same right. And by the way, how the castle doctrine came about is it just put the title for something that has been the law in damn near every state for the last 150 years. What happened would you get a situation where, classic case, an armed burglar broke in to do a home invasion. He was armed. The homeowner was on the 2nd floor in his bedroom with his wife. He heard the break-in. He got his pistol. He came to the top of the stairs armed. The burglar shot at him. The homeowner shot at the burglar. Both of them missed, but the burglar tripped and fell and broke his leg and sued the homeowner. So it is you break in a man's castle, you're on your own. And then there's an old common law doctrine called a tumultuous entry. You are supposed to identify the intruder before you shoot, because it might be your drunk son coming home from college making a surprise visit, and he left his key, so he's going to come in the way he used to when he was in the 9th grade.
All right.
But when somebody kicks in the door, breaks in a window, that's called a tumultuous entry. And in just about every place in America, you could shoot first, ask questions later with that. So everybody was within their rights, and this whole thing got screwed around because Sissified Anderson Cooper, who has a husband, did not like the idea of people having guns, so he launched an attack and he distributed a lot of misinformation. Nancy Grace is a sleaze, and she does that a lot. For example, a lot of Americans think OJ got away with murder. And the reason they think that is because of the falsified fake news that Nancy Grace was giving the public. They know she's a fake now, but they didn't at the time. But she was the one saying OJ is not going to survive this. The evidence was devastating. And I recorded every scrap in my chambers. When I'd look, I said, what the hell is he talking about? Doesn't get any better than this for the defense. So they really didn't have a case, but she caused the public to think they had a case. So there are all kinds of things like this that are bad. Now, Breonna Taylor.
You know, judge say she was an EMT or emergency first responder type person, not necessarily a correctional.
Not with corrections. I stand corrected on that. Yeah. But she worked with law enforcement and first responder. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. She ought to know better. But that besides the point, her death is a tragedy. But who are you going to blame? The boyfriend who fired the shot, the cops who fired the shot, or the idiots who were taking a smoke break and didn't report that the warrant had been served?
See, I mean, I don't know what to make. That case is so like murky to me because the details, the narrative is always changing. Because I heard one narrative, they said she had a gun and she was the one that shot at the cops. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, it's kind of weird.
I can get stuff through NCIC and look at the local police reports. And what I was reading was she was asleep in the bed and the bullets went through the sheetrock wall, which they do quite easily. They were 9mm. It went straight through like it was cheese.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead. Tragedy.
Well, I got to ask you about the Sandra Bland thing. You believe that she killed herself down in Texas in a jail cell?
You mean the one that got pulled over and taken to jail? Well, I don't know, but let me just add this. Her bond was, what was it, $250?
It was like little, not that much. It shouldn't have been that. But she got in jail over the weekend, though. That's the thing.
But the point was, is her family wouldn't pay the bond.
Mm.
It was $250, something like that, nominal bond.
Mm-hmm.
And I've encountered people like that, and it's like the cop on the scene didn't jack her up. He arrested her. It struck me that they were treating her like she was a crazy woman or somewhat deranged or being unreasonable. They had no real motive to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
What would they gain? What were they mad at her about? She basically did herself. If she not went off, they probably would have let her go.
You know, I don't think I would not act like she acted. I've been in those situations, especially in Texas before, but she didn't deserve to die.
She didn't deserve to die. So the question is, she certainly didn't deserve to die.
Right.
So the question is, did somebody kill her or did she actually hang herself?
But they never came clean. Like, I want to know what type of garbage bag or whatever she used. They never said the name of the brand. See what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that was left unanswered. The
I
whole
know.
thing.
The only thing is when somebody kills themselves, nobody's satisfied with the answers.
But what if that place had a previous history of black folks ending up suicided, like that place did?
That sounds suspect.
Okay.
But the point of the exercise is in this country, black, white, brown, red, yellow, it doesn't have to be a perfect crime. It's just if you don't talk and there are no witnesses, most homicides are not solved unless somebody talks.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at is just the way things work. Most homicides go unsolved. Like Memphis, for example, is known as the first-degree murder capital of America. Prominent individual. Were you old enough to have gone to Gridley's barbecue?
I remember Gridley, but I never had tried it, but I remember it well.
Best ribs in America. They had a flagship restaurant on Summer. White linen on the tables, great bread, freezing cold pitchers of beer, and they didn't have any young waiters. They were all to be hired in the place. You had to be a head waiter at a prominent hotel. So all of the waiters were in their 40s and 50s, and they hustled. Great
so
service.
it's kind of like a rendezvous, right? They were making good tips.
No, way above rendezvous.
Really, rendezvous will be like
kind of a dump. And frankly, about rendezvous, I know I will eat there again, but every time I eat there, I wonder why I wasted my time and then wonder why I'll be back. But Gridley's was best of the best. Now, here's what the thing was. They would not take credit cards, but they would take cash and checks, including out-of-town checks with no ID. They're laundering money, in other words. They'd close the cash register at 7:30, 8:30 at night, and they'd stay open until 2 o'clock. Well, I knew the maitre d' because I was getting his girlfriend a divorce and not charging her, and he was saying, well, make sure you come through, you get treated well. So I'm hearing noises about the money's funny. So on I-55 going into Mississippi at Shelby Drive on a Wednesday night about 3:30 in the morning, old man Gridley dies in a one-car wreck, no witnesses. It's Wednesday. Thursday, his general manager dies quarter of a mile away, same location, 3:30 in the morning, one-car wreck, no witnesses. Friday, his chief accountant dies at the same place, one-car wreck, no witnesses. Now, I can guarantee you that is not a coincidence. But you see, there are no suspects in that homicide. Excuse me, how do you explain the 3 concise holes in the victim's skull that match this particular stick this crazy cop had? He's now dead. That's up in here, and you want to talk about the guy slipped and fell onto the grass lawn, and somehow or another the grass compacted and put these 3 precise holes in his head. Wait a minute. See, all kinds of stuff happens. See, when you start talking about somebody committing suicide in a prison cell, I think there was an even more notorious case of somebody wanted for that trafficking ring dying off in a Rikers Island prison cell where there was a whole high profile, and he definitely was not somebody black. Now, has anybody been charged for that yet?
Epstein at the Manhattan.
Epstein,
Manhattan, yeah. Notorious prison, from my understanding.
Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? If you don't tell anybody and there are no witnesses, most homicides are unsolved.
This is true. You're definitely right, Judge. I think people kind of delusional about how everything works. People don't really understand how things really work. I think that's the problem. They don't teach civics in school anymore. People don't study things. We look at law and order and you think everything be solved within an hour. Like,
It doesn't work that way. See,
most
half of what happened, just like with research on COVID-19, you're
Mhm.
working on it, you investigating it, you're going, what the hell? Something just doesn't seem right about this. And you work on it some more. And then on the 5th week after it happened, you are asleep and you say, wait a minute. Oh, shit. You wake up and you slap your head, say, that's what happened.
Mhm.
Maybe. And you jump up early in the morning and you go to the scene and you check something out. Yeah, that's how that went down. But you see, you have to have that clue, that flash. It's like the researcher who was wearing a lab coat until 11 p.m., went home. He's been doing this for weeks trying to come up with some kind of vaccine or figure out what the hell the mechanism of this virus is. And it's been eluding him, and he sits up at 4:17 a.m. in his bed, slaps his head, and say, that might be it. He rushes down early that morning to the lab to look into it after he's gotten the insight. See, that's how this stuff works. It's not like CSI where some script writers have thrown something together off of the top of their head. They know how it's going to come out when they write it.
I got to ask you this. Speaking of confessions, like, what do you think about the Kendrick Johnson case being reopened by the local sheriff's department down there because of a confession, an audio confession? Like, the two lead suspects were the brothers who were the sons of this very powerful FBI agent in Georgia. So, are you familiar with that case? The brother about found in a mat.
Again, I don't know that much about it, and see how it develops, because the only thing I've heard is through the news media. And as I said, the news media is about as accurate as kids' cartoons are about reality and life. There's a semblance. That's about it.
Like, I actually interviewed Kendrick's parents and his lawyer back in 2013. I commend them for being this resolute, because they had to exhume his body, I think, twice. If I'm not mistaken. I know they exhumed his body once, but that whole story stunk to high heaven, and it's sad. But I respect their
Well,
resoluteness.
that's good. Maybe the point is well taken. I don't know that enough about. I don't know that much about it. See, you have to remember, for 50 years, this has been how I earn my living, is work. So, kind of sort of, when you are at home and you got free time, you do something other than what you've been dogging in day in and day out for work. So I'm not on the case. I'm not presiding over it. I don't represent anybody. So I might look at it when I get some sound information, but I'm glad to hear that from you. I did not know you interviewed him. But I don't know enough about the case to say anything one way or the other.
It's interesting. You look at these things, like you said, most of these cases go unsolved. And yeah, Epstein, it was the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, but Rikers, all the same thing. Best about. I mean, that brother Khalif Brother, who got killed, who committed suicide because of his time in Rikers unjustly in prison. I'm gonna tell you, Judge, like you said, we do a lot of laying down. I'm just tired of all the so-called tough talk and rhetoric. Like, people are quick to point out if you got a date or fact or name wrong, but they don't really hold these people accountable that terrorize our community, starting with some of our own people. Like, your life ain't worth nothing unless a white cop does something to you, not because your brother or sister do something to you and violate you. And I think black folks need to just stop thinking that a revolution is going to be in a movie, a superhero movie, or somebody doing a speech at an award show. Like,
I was talking to Mimi about how cops were in L.A. back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I even told her about the uniform bit, where they had these neat form-fitted leather jackets with the gun belts built into the bottom, wore these white helmets and riding pants and knee-high spit shine Nazi-looking jack boots.
Mm-hmm.
That looked like something out of a World War II movie. Or, you know, when the Nazis come in and do something, Fritz, please look for his papers. Jawohl, Karl, I will look. You will present your papers, yeah? Hey, man, what papers you talking about, man? Your papers, please. You will present your papers, yeah? Well, man, what you talking about? Papers, man? He does not have his papers, Karl. Gott in Himmel. You know, like, man, what y'all talking about, man? You mean like my driver's license? Ah, das ist wunderbar, yeah? You know, like, it's like you got in the time machine and you jumped out and you saw them red flags with the white circles and the black swastika, you know, like real deal cops. It wasn't like bumpkins down south. This was the Gestapo. And they wore those, you know, those dark aviator shades, you know, like you couldn't see the eyes and like
that's scary.
looking at you like, what was the problem, man? You know, like, hey, what I do?
Wow. I know you told us a couple of stories about your time in Plaza, L.A. or Cali being sundown town, so to speak, basically.
Oh, that was Inglewood.
Okay, it's weird that Inglewood was a sundown town.
Oh, man, you did not cross through Inglewood lightly after dark. The only way you were going to get through Inglewood is if they stopped you, you were in trouble, unless you had a pass from an employer that you were a domestic yard man or something like that.
Wow.
Or you were working at a gas station or on something like that, you know. Man, Inglewood cops used to be rough too.
And somebody in the chat talking about Signal Hill in Long Beach. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So they got the same. Cali got a unique brand of racism. I can't.
Let me tell you about an event in Long Beach. Me and some homeboys, the year was 1967, 68, something like that. We were doing some community work out there. So the two of us and a fourth guy, we met up at a bar. They had cold beer. So we're sitting there. Two guys walked in with light trench coats on. And one of the guys pulled an M3 45 caliber submachine gun out from under the trench coat. Well, everybody at my table, including me, we were well armed. We went, oh shit, man, is this stuff gonna go down like this? This is crazy. So the other guy had a 45 and he put it on the countertop and he pulled out a roll of bills, peeled it off. This backed in at a lot of money, $50, put it up there. He said, everybody in here drink what they want to drink, but ain't nobody leaving till Earl gets here. Earl's hypothetical. Well, Earl ain't here. Well, does Earl come in? Yeah, he coming. Well, we're going to be around for the next hour, so enjoy yourself on us. So Earl comes in about 25 minutes with a couple of his posse, right? So the guy said, you Earl. You look like Earl, saw the picture. Said, yeah, man, what you want? Well, you have some accountability. And the other two, they got told, you can leave now. No, I ain't leaving my partner. So the guy that had the 45 said, well, take him too. And the guy with the submachine gun cut loose, gunned down Earl and his homeboy, and the other guy ran out the front. Well, the guy said, stay in here for another 5 minutes. Don't nobody leave. So you know what they did with the submachine gun?
What?
The guy took a handkerchief, wiped it, dropped it right there. Took the magazine so it was unloaded. The guy walked over with the 45 and shot each of them in the head 4 times. That's 8 shots. He had a 7-shot magazine, 1 in the chamber. He wiped the gun down, left the gun there, walked out. everybody that says, fuck this 5-minute thing. We out of here.
Damn.
Didn't anybody see anything? That's an unsolved murder. That's a hit.
And you was there. You was all for that. You was there.
I mean, we sitting there. We all armed. I always carried a
So it
45.
it didn't bother you at all. Just I mean, did it like fuck you up in the head or?
No, it wasn't the first time I'd seen that shit. I had my 45. Somebody had a 357, and there were 2 Browning eye powers. So we were like, gotta go. Hell, don't fuck with us. But we ain't in that. So we got up and left after that. But see, that kind of shit goes down. That was in Long Beach. See, that's what I'm saying. People get killed all the time. And if there aren't any people who are going to make an identification and somebody doesn't talk, they can't do it. So probably these folk got flown in from somewhere back on the East Coast. Nobody knows them locally.
Yeah. So brother A.L.L, who spoke on the phone earlier, said LAPD were recruited heavily from Alabama and Mississippi.
Well, 1973, I was in Jackson, Mississippi, and I pulled down 2 recruitment posters from LAPD that were stapled to a phone pole, and I sent them back to some homeboys in LA. Said, see, man, look what these MFs are doing. They're recruiting in Jackson, Mississippi. See, Chief Parker, who was in there for life for good behavior, was recruited from Alabama.
Okay.
And when you get to LA, you see these mountains, those San Bernardino mountains.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of the mountains are the valley, and they still vote in the mayor's election. So what happened is in the 40s and in the 50s, a lot of white folk came in from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and all that other kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of the black folk, Mexicans, Asians, and Jews lived in the basin. So the real white folk on the other side didn't want to be hearing that. So there was great corruption in LAPD. That's like LA Confidential kind of is realistic. I remember that being like that. And Parker got brought in from Alabama because he had no connections with organized crime in LA. And he got appointed for life for good behavior. So what happened is the police ran City Hall. They always did, but in LA Confidential, they have this scene where detectives bust off in the office of the elected DA, and they dangle him out of his own window from the 17th floor of what we call the Superman building, which was that's the Superman always jumped over that building in the movies and the cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually did that, where detectives dangled the elected DA out of his office window by his ankles, holding him upside down to give him the word that do not attempt to interfere with what we are doing. Now, that's how bold LAPD was.
Wow. I gotta ask you though. I guess we'll close it out a little bit. But George Floyd, your take on the George Floyd situation? Should they go to? I mean, what should be the outcome?
Well, they've settled it.
What about with Derek Chauvin? You think that's like, okay, we gave y'all 27 million, so he get to walk?
That has nothing to do with it.
Okay. So
see, here's what's going on. People have been saying, well, he doesn't want to prosecute. Doesn't make any difference if the victim doesn't want to prosecute. It's up to the state, because what the person's on trial for is something against the public peace, dignity, and order, and the victim is often the best witness for that. So when a victim doesn't want to be a witness and the DA is really hot about it, they can do what? Lock the victim up as a material witness and keep him in jail until he testifies, or demand and receive a bond for him to get out so that he will come back, or forfeit the bond and be subject to arrest. So the victim can be compelled to be a witness for the state. On a civil matter, what the civil matter is, basically the theory is if you go to trial in a civil court, you win a judgment, it's a bribe to keep you from having a vendetta that you start and taking matters into your own hands.
Mm-hmm.
That's to promote the public peace, dignity, and order. So if you get indicted in any of the states or the United States, it says on or about such and such date, John Doe did, comma, against the public peace, dignity, and order of Tennessee or of the United States of America, commit the following alleged acts or act. Public peace, dignity, and order.
And Judge, I got to ask you this as well, I guess, to close it out, because I mean, you're a man, a lot of wisdom and experience, and especially coming from Los Angeles, growing up there. And we know this month was the 30th anniversary of the killing of 15-year-old Latasha Harlins by the Korean store owner back in March the 16th, 1991. And currently people talk about this anti-Asian racism.
Well, let's put it this way.
Black people
I've heard of it, but in 1991, I was sitting on a criminal court bench in Memphis, Tennessee, Division 9 of the criminal courts for the 30th Judicial District, state of Tennessee. So, you know, I had my caseload, and that was of passing interest. Whole lot of people get killed on a regular basis. I was talking to someone recently, and I was just reading some police reports I had or bulletins that come through on police activity. So if a detective is investigating something, he can see if there are the similar crimes. So just in the Memphis area, night before last, there were like 9 homicides or attempted homicides, you know, 7 or 8 robberies, and so on. And all of them, not all of them, but a significant number of them probably would have made national news had it been a slow day and somebody just cherry picked it. See, what you hear, Breonna Taylor, Floyd, and all of that, this kind of stuff goes on day in and day out. And even though people have cell phones, I assure you, they are not recording everything going on. So just remember, a lot of what you get worked up on is the product of we need news on a slow news day. It's not that you should be concerned, but just understand it's a tip of the iceberg situation.
Yeah. Is there a such thing as community government? Is that possible for people, I guess, in the inner city, perhaps, to set up?
Community interdependence, community cohesion is something that's assumed in the fabric of American law. It's disappearing. But posse comitatus, deputization for a posse, citizens arrest, all of these things reflect that. The Second Amendment, all of this reflects that. But we get away from it. See, I can remember where I grew up in L.A. back in the 50s. Tom Bradley, we knew him because he'd gone to the Olympics. He went to UCLA. He tried to be a cop. They wouldn't hire him until he became a licensed attorney in the state of Tennessee. Then they let him ride in the squad car. So he was the first black man elected in modern times to be the mayor of Los Angeles on his 3rd try. He patrolled our neighborhood. He's big old brother, 6'4". He never lost a race down a back alley to warm somebody's head, but he was just, fair, and administered frontier justice. Well, he and his partner would have meetings with the men in the community, and he would tell us what was going wrong and tell us what maybe needed to be done, and would offer, he and his partner, that if, you know, of course, if we're talking to you in a meeting like this, you couldn't be where you did something wrong, now could you? In other words, you want to participate in keeping order where you live, and we'll back you up because we can't be there all the time. And you can do things that we can't do, but we can allow you to do and help you to do.
And somebody said homeowners association, that's your community government. How's it going?
No, that's a new thing.
Okay.
They had covenants. Basically, don't rent the Negroes or do this, that, and the other, or everybody contributes to the upkeep of the lake, and then you have fights because 10 people that lived around the lake, like Sky Lake over here in North Memphis, got 10 people live around the lake. They put up fences so nobody can live or use the lake, but 660 parcels are supposed to pay for the upkeep of the lake that only 10 property owners can use.
Right.
You know, like that kind of thing. Yeah, you got all that stuff going on.
Sound like Biden's America to me. I mean,
Biden's an asshole. I heard that racist son of a bitch in 1972 outside of the state capital of Delaware in Dover with Faubus on the podium with him, John Stennis, James O. Eastland, Strom Thurmond, Byrd, you name the racist, they were up there with him, and they were saying he was the last of the true yellow dog Dixiecrats. And here was the best chance that good white people had of turning back this horrible segregation. He called Negro children roaches that day, and if you let them integrate the schools, they'll infest them and you'll never get them out. And Negro men were animals, and they turned the streets into jungles. And he and Strom Thurmond, if he got elected to the Senate, which he did in 73, they would ensure that they built lots of zoos to put these animals in so the streets would be safe. All this kind of nonsense. And by the way, people keep talking about the 94 crime bill. That's not the one. There was the 76 crime bill. There was the 79 crime bill. There was the 81 crime bill. There was the 87 crime bill. There was the 91 crime bill. And then there was the 94 one. And the 94 one wasn't even the worst. See, the worst was the one where he pushed this legislation he sponsored where one rock could get you 5 years in a federal penitentiary. And that wasn't 5 years because one of his other things he and Strom Thurmond did was to end federal parole and probation except for youthful offenders. So you could not get paroled if you got 5 years. That was 60 months. You would be released from federal custody after 58 months if you got all good and honored time. You might spend 4 months in a halfway house, but you couldn't go about your business. See, he's responsible for that. And Strom Thurmond.
Hey, I want somebody in the chat, Sister Anita Brown Campbell. What the judge is saying about Inglewood is so true. You would not be caught dead in Inglewood after dark. Look up Inglewood KKK. In many ways, California was as bad as the Deep South.
Yeah, and they had a Gestapo that was well-funded, well-trained, with great communications and plenty of attitude, and they thought they were Hollywood.
Because y'all, LAPD invented the SWAT team, right? They invented SWAT, right?
Yes.
Man, I've been out of Cali, man. It's pretty out there.
SIS, Special Investigative Services. Those are the ones that took down all of the blacks organizations. And look up Glass House Tapes by Louis Tackwood.
Yeah, we talked about it. That book is expensive, Judge. You got a copy. That book got like $1,000 or something.
Yeah, I know. And I got a copy sitting up in my kitchen every now and then. I know this guy. I thought
is he still around? Is he still alive?
I have no idea.
I heard him on Mae Brussels. I heard him on Mae Brussels show back in the day.
He told everybody he was a paramedic because he'd been in the war, right? And when somebody got hurt, which happened from time to time in the movement, he would treat them. I remember I was in law school, man, and they told us to go check this murder case out that was on trial. And I'm in there. And who did they call to the witness stand but Louis Tackwood? I thought he was going to testify about how he treated somebody, you know, first aid. They identified him as head of the undercover department of the undercover unit for SIS, Lieutenant Louis Tackwood. I said, oh shit, but he didn't tell on everybody. So, you know.
Well, you selective. He ain't gonna be like Serpico. They shot him in the face. He's still around. Serpico, Frank Serpico, the cop that Al Pacino played in that movie.
Yeah.
He trying to be too honest. You know, he trying to be an honest cop. He thought it was about community policing, but he was doing it the wrong way for them.
Yeah, he was shooting too many. How many people he killed? 42?
No, Serpico was a clean. He was an honest broker.
No, not Serpico. Who was the other guy? They had somebody playing him in the French Connection.
Oh, Popeye Doyle.
Popeye Doyle. He killed 42 folk.
I mean, like, you know, I had saw a speech that Malcolm did. He said, whenever there's a lot of police, that's where all the crime is. Well, the most places with the most police is where the crime is being committed. It's organized because police control the crime.
See, let me tell you something about crime now.
Yeah.
I had a motion to suppress in my court in 1994, and that's been what?
It's over
27 years ago. All right.
Mm-hmm.
They had a motion to suppress identification of 3 suspects in a liquor store robbery, right?
Mm-hmm.
The liquor store is located on a parking lot. Well, there was a helicopter that had infrared technology, and you can see on the black and white quality print from what they had, there's the guy with his arm straight out with a pistol. You can see somebody with a shotgun. You just see straight down on them, and then the helicopter moves off. It's at 5,000 feet, and you get a side angle on them, so you can actually see the guy holding down on everybody with a shotgun, and the guy with a pistol, and another one over there actually going into the cash register. What they did is they put a diamond around one, an oval around one, and a square around one. So when they ran out to the car, they put a circle around the driver. An oval stayed on one, the diamond stayed on the other, and the square on the other one. They jumped in the car, and they did not allow police pursuits in the Memphis area because they had the helicopter. So the helicopter follows them 4.5 miles to where they're staying. It's hovering, and you can see in the helicopter several squad car units 2 streets over on each side of the route the crooks are on, and they're paralleling them, staying about a block behind so they won't be seen. So when the people go in the house, the geometric shapes have not moved off of them, and you can see them down through the roof of the house through infrared. So when the cops go in, you hear the dialogue said, okay, come in. There should be something like a couch to your left. All right, go over there, look behind the couch. And you can see the guy that had the oval around him lifted up, and they marched him out. They found another guy hiding in a closet, and you could see the remaining shape, and it was above all these people. And the guy in the helicopter said, see if they have an attic. So they do. So the guy went up in the attic, 2 of them went, or 3 of them went up in the attic, and they said he's a little bit to your left front, towards your left front few steps. They got him. So in other words, the shapes went on them while they were holding it up. They never left them while they were in the getaway. Didn't leave them once they got to where they were going. So you could make the identification. So I denied the motion to suppress. But you see, they have that technology improved now because that was 27 years ago.
So somebody asked, do you remember when they put, they said LAPD put address numbers on roofs so helicopters could identify homes from the air? Is that
true? And I remember coming out of my apartment, I was going to the law library, and boom, 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 boom. Attention, this is a police helicopter. You will stand in one place. A ground unit will arrive shortly. Remove your identification and hold it in your right hand. Be still, make no furtive movements, or you will be responded to accordingly. Now, everybody in LA knew what the fatal furtive was. Your Honor, he made a furtive movement, and I thought my life was in jeopardy. So I shot him 6 times, reloaded, shot him 6 more times, and I had 6 more rounds. I reloaded him and shot 3 more times before he rolled out of sight. Okay, fine. Wow. But that's the way they used to do it in LA. Now, when I came back for a vacation in 1976, I'm riding around with some of my friends. I said, do you notice anything different? I said, something is wrong. Take a look. I said, damn, where are all the trees? LAPD had cut down all the trees so they could have their helicopters patrol at rooftop level. So you walk out of your house and there's a helicopter 20 feet over you. Boom, 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 boom. What in the hell is that? Look out the window, man. There's a helicopter up there. Man, they're right on top. They land on your roof, man. Somebody says this. Yeah. Miss Love says 1980s and 90s were rough, and I was a youngster. I'm talking about I was a youngster back in the 50s, in high school in the early 60s, and out of college before the 60s were out. I'm talking about when they was real rough. They civilized by then. World War II had come and gone, literally, and they had wiped out the Nazis. This was just the leftover of the descendants of the stormtroopers.
Lord. Well, a lot of those Nazis moved out to Orange County, right?
Oh, yes. And then you had that whole aerospace industry. You had a whole bunch of them goose steppers.
This country's crazy, man. I don't understand how we survive, man. Oh my God. I got to ask somebody to keep on asking this question. Can you see it? Judge Joe, was there a difference between the black students at USC versus those at UCLA in the 60s and 70s?
Yeah, there was.
Okay.
UCLA was a public school. USC was a private school. And to understand the difference, until Ronald Reagan became governor of California, there was no tuition at the University of California or the state university, which became the state college, which is now the state university, nor was there any tuition at the city colleges. They had a general fee that covered all of your tickets, free medical care, eyeglasses, dental care, prescription medication, birth control, all of this stuff, all events, it all came under what they called an incidental fee, but there was no tuition. Like the incidental fee, first part of the 60s, to go to the medical school at the University of California, the incidental fee for a year was $56.
Really?
Yeah, it started off at $105 a semester, and then it went to $56.50 a quarter when we went to a quarterly basis. Wow. And that got you in everywhere. You never had to pay for medical treatment. No prescriptive drugs did you pay for. You needed glasses, that was free too. Need your teeth worked on, no charge.
So Ronald Reagan changed all that as governor.
Yeah, he actually campaigned. Wow. Part of his campaign plank was to end free public education.
What?
He said the only people that take advantage of it are long-haired, commie, pinko sympathizing hippies and militants. So why should they get a free education? And then he appealed all of these Southerners who were peeking out about the late 1960s, and they had that thing, love it or leave it. Reagan was interesting. We protested against this guy when he ran for governor 3 times over 2 days. Now, this was what's freak. He's reaching under his coat. Al, I can't seem to find my speech. Have you seen my speech, Al? Oh my, I guess I'll have to wing it. My fellow citizens of California. And he gave the same speech 3 times over 2 days, but it wasn't really a speech because he dropped his pencil. He had a pencil. I'm just taking notes. And he dropped his pencil the same place in each speech. He coughed the same place in each speech. And we said, This isn't a speechwriter. This is a damn script. This is a B-grade actor. What the hell?
And he was a 2-term president. This country deserves what it gets, man. I don't know what the hell going on, Judge. I don't see how we survived this long, to be honest.
Well, you have two things. Remember when bin Laden was hiding in Pakistan, right near the military base? Well, in 1980, under the Reagan administration, they recruited bin Laden to deliver the nuclear weapons plans to the Pakistanis to offset the Indians. So he had done the Pakistanis that favor, so they weren't going to turn him in. Next thing, as you remember, plausible deniability. It looks like they tried to kill him then so Reagan wouldn't be turned in for openly defying the sanction against providing arms and money to the Contras. And he had bin Laden delivering the Stinger missiles for the cash to come back the other way. Now, there are 2,500 unaccounted for Stinger missiles that are still out there. And by the way, they are portable. They weigh 15 pounds for the whole setup. It'd be easy enough for somebody to, 150,000 people have been waved through the border, no checks, no nothing, no frisk, no inspection, and the drug dealers are laughing and the cartels are giggling. Be easy enough. You don't think Al-Qaeda would infiltrate somebody or ISIS and bring a few of those Stinger missiles and stand outside of Houston Airport in the cleared area and shoot down a 747 or two.
Wow. And Judge, I'm wrapping it up. People just really trying to pick your brain. I know you met Huey P. Newton. You knew a lot of the Black Panthers. And
I knew most
even Kwame Ture, right? Have you met? I want to know. Have you ever met Kwame or Stokely?
I met Stokely a long time ago. I was bodyguard for a week for H. Rap Brown. I knew Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Cleaver. His wife was one fine rascal, but she had a PhD and he was a convict. Very interesting couple. I knew Angela.
Kathleen Cleaver. You talking about
Kathleen Cleaver? Yeah. I don't remember all the names. I'm getting too old. I just remember the details and what the significance were. That's what I was saying about history. I knew Angela Davis. She was a friend. Let's see, I recruited Elaine Brown to school. She'd been a secretary out there. Bunchy Carter and John Huggins. I recruited them. Nathaniel Clark, Geronimo Pratt. She was crazy. He'd done 4 tours, maybe 5 in the NAM with the Green Berets. He was a sergeant. He's the one that set up that sandbag readout in the Panther Party headquarters. So when LAPD raided it, their SWAT team, which was 4 days off of when they killed Fred Hampton in Chicago, which was a different proposition. They had a 3.5-hour shootout. Nobody got killed because they had the sandbag revetment inside the headquarters. And they had 2 Thompson submachine guns in there. So they weren't half-stepping.
Man, that's crazy. Like I got a brother from North Memphis, Berkey Owens. He brought up the Shannon Street Massacre. We talked about that before. People didn't look at that documentary on Under a Blood Red Moon. That stuff was horrible. How that was handled by the public officials.
Well, let me tell you what happened. I was involved in that. The FBI asked me to go in and take pictures and be the community representative or witness. So it was a brother that was the photographer for the FBI. So we're in there going through that house. They captured the folk alive and then executed them after they captured them. Those 4 that were in the room, we took the rods and put them in the bullet holes in the hardwood floor. They lined up right with the door. So they laid these people in head, foot. And from the 2 opposite bedroom doors, they shot them in the head from the doorway. So they murdered them.
But you know, the fact that the mayor and the police lit that, they could hear the cops screaming, they could have stopped that without killing all those people.
Well, no, they were already captured.
But I'm talking when they tortured that cop though for hours. They said they could hear him screaming outside. That was weird.
See, that cop had a bad history in the community.
Well, I know the one that got away, but the one that killed, the one that got away, I know he had a bad reputation. But the
Yeah,
one
and
that
see,
killed
the
was
other thing is
I don't know any pieces.
Carmen Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
You may know her.
Dr. Carmen Johnson, talking about from
No, not that one. No,
Oh, okay.
Carmen
She was
Johnson,
in
who
your
retired.
campaign, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Carmen Johnson had been captain over the sheriff's department's homicide bureau. She
Mm-hmm.
also retired as captain over the sex crime squad. Well, she was the negotiator for the sheriff's department. So the police would not let her negotiate with the folk inside the Shannon Street residence. And she was online going to a next door neighbor's, calling from there. They wanted to talk to her, but the police did not want her to talk to them. Memphis was one hot piece of racist mess then.
This was like 15 years after King. Was this 83? When
Yeah.
did Shannon Street? Okay. So when you talk about the fact that you had judges calling people niggas in court back in the 80s, this is crazy to me.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like, and y'all, I mean, you a man, you know, but I guess the court, you're an officer of the court, right? I guess you gotta.
Well, that judge was senile.
Why was he a judge still? Who was he connected to?
Well, see, you have to understand he was Ben Hooks' sponsor.
Oh,
He
okay.
would adopt Negroes, and he'd say, "You are fine, credit to your race. And if you ever need anything, feel free. This court will always be there to help you." Yeah, fine, damn it. See, he picked his Negroes, and this is up. Ben Hooks was an upstanding Negro. See, H.T. Locker, now dead, was partner with Ben Hooks, and he'd say Ben Hooks he was a preacher, and he would give a fiery sermon, but if he overstepped his grounds, they'd call him. And he said Hooks didn't like to get any place early ever. He was always late, but he'd be early on Monday to go down there to Old City Hall, which was located where the civil courthouse is now, inside there. And he would explain he was just trying to set up credibility and get the Negroes interested. He really wasn't trying to offend anybody. And, boss, I'll be cool.
Mm. He got all these places and buildings and streets and institutes named after him.
Yeah. And Lockett, you said something one time. He said, Ben had his feet firmly planted on the ground. I said, well, what in the hell does that mean? He said, you ever heard the term uppity Negro? I said, yeah. He said, well, feet planted firmly on the ground was the opposite of uppity Negro. I was the uppity Negro. This Locker thought about himself, and Ben had his feet planted firmly on the ground. Yes, yeah, that boy got his feet planted firmly on the ground. He a credit to his race. He is. So he is.
Man, that's interesting. But Judge, I guess we could talk all night, but I definitely want to give you a chance to rest up before the big race.
Oh no, I don't need rest up. I just set the alarm, wake up. It's already got the station on there. What I'm looking for is this brother is 7 times world champion.
Mm-hmm.
The only black man that has raced, and he's halfway cool. Well, he's cool, brother. He does what he does. And nobody's better. And I just like him coming in there and kicking everybody in the ass. Like, okay. When he puts that helmet on, and drops that face shield and the lights go out, all hell's breaking loose. You got a race on.
Yeah. And the people like Ben Hooks, he was with Dr. King, and then but also he was the president of NAACP. Or he's the first black person on the FCC commission.
Yeah, he was the FCC commissioner.
And also
He was a Republican, by the way.
I didn't know he was Republican. He was a prominent preacher. He had a church up in Detroit as well as in Memphis.
See, everybody black in Memphis was a Republican up until Kennedy made some phone calls in 1960 that Nixon didn't. People strayed to the Democratic Party to support FDR for his New Deal because everybody was starving and broke. They've got an organization that I attended a meeting about 10 years ago. It was all white. It was called the Lincoln Republicans. And what are you doing here? I said, I just came in to check it out. Well, why would you be interested in a Republican function? I said, I'm not. I just wanted to goad you. Well, why would that? I said, because you do know black people started the Lincoln Republicans, don't you? They still look at me. What do you mean? I said, this was an all-black organization at one time. Same one, same charter you have. It was the Lincoln Republicans. Black folk were all Republicans in Shelby County. They founded it. And you don't have a single black member now. It used to be 100% black. You white folk wouldn't pay any attention to it. You tried to ostracize it because you were good Democrats. See how the script gets flipped?
That's crazy. But I still don't see why we so loyal to the Democrats based on they was the original white man's party.
Yeah.
And the terrorism they get against black people over the decades and generations is ridiculous.
They were in fact chartered to assist the spread of slavery into the new territories. The Republican Party was founded in 1851 for one of the specific purposes was furthering abolition or the ending of slavery.
I'm trying to go ahead, Judge.
Anyway, man, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to help you out, Judge.
Well, how about I got to go? This has been Joe coming in on the We All Be show. So check it out, give a shout, run about, do your thing, and keep it in your head that you're still alive, you ain't dead. So it's time to free yourself, walk out the goddamn gate, don't be late and let it hit you in the ass when it tries to close down on you. Don't nobody own you. You're a free man. Do what you got to do. And if you give something to somebody, get something for it unless you're laying it.
Oh, we love you badly, brother Judge. We can find you at Judge Joe Brown TV on Twitter, Blue Check. You're not part of the Blue Check Mafia.
No, I don't have Blue Check, but I do have a red P on Parler.
Okay, tell us about the Parler. How we follow you on Parler?
Judge Joe Brown.
All right.
With a red check. Now, I like Parler.
Hey, Judge, you low now. I don't know what happened with the value. I don't know. You trying to drop some knowledge and they just turn you down.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about Parler. They tried to sabotage Parler. Parler, you get 1,000 strokes. Twitter, you get 280, including the spaces and the punctuation. You can actually.
Hey, Judge, you can't come in like you real low. I don't know what happened.
Okay, how about that?
Yeah, go back to what you were saying. Rewind it.
Parler lets you have 1,000 strokes. Twitter, you get 280, including punctuation and spaces.
Okay.
On Parler, you can actually discuss and support something. On Twitter, what they allow you, if you read it, would be a 10-second soundbite. So that's what they let you. And you have to make these emphatic statements on Twitter, whereas you can discuss on Parler. The other thing is if somebody complains on you on Parler, you have a right to a jury, not by the people that run it, but by the people that use it. On Twitter, they use their algorithms, and that LGBTQ bunch that owns and operates Twitter does it. Now, somebody said they can discriminate against you all they want. They can censor you. And then I just point to that poor guy that has the cake shop where they're on him again. They want him to make a cake for some couple that decided, not couple, somebody that decided to come out, and he's refusing again. So if they can make the man make a cake, then goddamn, they can make Twitter respect the First Amendment. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know, it can't last forever. They're gonna have to cancel culture soon.
Well, not only that, I think they're gonna have a very bad backlash. It's gonna get quite violent.
Well,
see, you know, here are the interesting statistics. There's really no dispute over it. A little less than 5.6 of the a little less than 5.6% of the American population is LGBTQ. For those 55 and over, it's a little over 1.5%. For those 18 to 25, it's 16%. But then that group 18 to 25, they're more boy virgins than girl virgins. So maybe that's not surprising. they don't know how to get laid, so I guess they want to experiment. And by the way, my contacts with CDC says there is an epidemic brewing for another disease. It's known as HIV. It's having a resurgence, but they say every time they want to put out a public service announcement about it, the networks will not carry it because they do these Truvada commercials that they're too committed to, and this LGBTQ thing where the Q stands for queer and questioning, and they want to encourage people to question and try. In fact, in some school systems, they're urging that students be propagandized to try homosexuality to see if they like it. So in the process of trying it, they're getting infected with HIV, and it's ramping back up to epidemic proportions again. Not good.
Well, I mean, if you go by the Georgia Guidestone that came out in 1980, I mean, they say they try and get the world population down to 500 million. And I guess this is one of the ways. I mean, have you ever seen this show on Amazon Prime called Utopia, Judge?
I know, but see, let me take that figure, 500 million. The U.S. is at 380 million.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
that's not going to deal with sustaining the economic, industrial, scientific, and educational and reproductive base of humanity. 500 million people is about the population of the world before Rome became an empire.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's too few. 500 million isn't even plausible, workable. The population's 7.6 billion right now.
Mm-hmm.
7.2 to 7.6 billion. That's getting to be too many. 360 for the U.S. is beginning to crowd. China reduced theirs from 1.7 billion about 35 years ago down to 1.2. So they're letting people have 2 kids now, not just one. But something needs to be done about controlling it. And the people that seem to have the handle on it are the Chinese. They always do, because basically they have a plan and they have a government that has the will to carry it out, and they have a policy. Excuse me, you don't like this? Okay, come with us. All right, there's the wall. Hold the wall up. All right, now, guys, you get some target practice. Ready? Aim. Boom, boom, boom. They do not pass go. Don't collect $4 or $5 million for the book about how they messed up. They get to get lead poisoning. You know?
I mean, it's gonna be interesting, but everybody gonna make a judge. We all know that. Everybody gonna make it, and we'll see.
We need to get off planet.
Okay.
Now, Mars is a step, but there is some good news. Well, on Star Trek, when they get to talking about warp 1, warp 2, that's hard science. At first, it took until 1980 something for somebody to come up with the physics of the thing about how you warp space.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he worked it out required exotic stuff like negative mass, negative energy, which theoretically might exist, but nobody's ever seen it. But they released announcements in the last month of the latest update in physics using current physics with nothing exotic required. They have shown how you can build warp fields, and you can get to Alpha Centauri with technology that exists, not the engineering, but the technology, in 4 years, one each way. Right now, with a chemical rocket, it would take between 50 and 70,000 years to get there. And with a nuclear rocket, 100 or so years each way. But with the warp drive, what happens is you don't violate Einstein's relativity, where he said nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. He actually made a pun of it. He said, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, but space itself is nothing, so space can move faster than the speed of light. So the idea is if you dump enough energy into creating this bubble, you can cause space in front of the vehicle to warp and shrink dramatically, and behind it to extend dramatically instantly. So what happens is you continue this process. The space inside the bubble remains the same as your point of departure. So there's no time dilation. Time passes the same for the travelers as it does for the people that you left behind. There is no inertial reference point because the space you're in is a bubble and you're not moving relative to the space you're in. So you can accelerate the bubble from 0 to multiple times the speed of light, but there's no acceleration felt by anybody inside the bubble. It's all kinds of interesting physics. They say that where they are right now is where they were at the beginning of World War II when Einstein sent Roosevelt a letter saying, Mr. President, there is a technology that could be developed that would allow us to possess a bomb of immeasurable power. And some of our enemies have the physics to do this. We better get on it. So Roosevelt set up the Manhattan Project, and 3 years later, they dropped the 2 bombs on Japan. Well, they are that close to getting a warp drive, and they expect a prototype in just a few decades. And when you look at that, remember the Wright brothers first flew 160 feet in 1903, and in 1969, 66 years later, they're landing on the moon. By the way, a friend of mine and I drove from D.C. down to Cape Canaveral, Florida, to see a night shot for the Apollo moon mission. We were 10 miles away. That thing lit up the sky. The ground shook like a California earthquake. The sound was just indescribable. That thing got up, and although when you look at film of it, it looks like it's moving slowly, that thing started off moving slowly, and then it was hauling ass. And on your radio, if you tuned in, it says, all right, we have successful liftoff. Okay, 5,000 feet, 240 knots. Okay, then it started quickly going to 15,000 feet, 680 knots, 24,000 feet, 980 knots, already past Mach 1. When you got up to 35,000 feet, that damn thing's going Mach 2. And then when they got out 100 miles downrange, it's still accelerating. You're going somewhere around 9,000 miles an hour. And then you could see the burst up in the darkness where they lit off the second stage. And then they quickly went up, said, we have 12,000 miles an hour, 400 miles downrange. And then they were calling it out. Everybody was just, damn. So when I hear folks saying they did that in the studio, no, they got that bad boy going. And then some years later, when NASA had me down to lecture to their community reach out program, they let me operate the shuttle simulator. And I landed it from orbit when it supposedly had some things. They were stunned I didn't crash it, but I landed it. And they took me out to see an engine burn for what's now one of these heavy lifters. They had it sideways, and they had 10-foot concrete reinforced slab behind it. They had 2 triangle braces and then a slab floor. This thing weighed 200 tons, and they had it mounted into the side of a granite hill. And when they lit this engine off, it was even worse than the Saturn V. You know, it moved that damn construct 4 feet back into that granite hill when we went down and looked at it afterwards.
Wow.
I said, God damn. So when I say, well, you know what? I had a physics major. The physics says you can get to the moon. The engineering says you can do it. I saw the damn thing take off, and that thing got to the goddamn moon. There is no doubt about it. And I actually met two of the moon astronauts who had walked on the moon later. Talked to them at some length over lunch. Neil Armstrong, in fact.
Nah, that's interesting. We can say that for another time. I'd love to know what Neil Armstrong y'all talked about. For how long was the conversation?
We were there for a celebrity ski race.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I weren't the best skiers at the time. So we sat there and chatted while everybody was up freezing their ass off. So he's an interesting guy. He's kind of aloof, but, you know, he's a pilot. He's badass. Got the right stuff.
Okay, well, Judge, thank you so much for feeding us this information and for helping us have a better understanding of how things really are put together and work. And I know we all can agree to disagree, but just be respectful about it. I know people in the chat, they're very opinionated, but they still got a lot of respect for you, Judge. And thank you for your patience and for your kindness in sharing all this.
One last thing to say. I want you to disagree with me. I don't want you to just follow what I say. The only thing I like to say is nobody listening is as radical as I am, nor has done what I've done for the cause. And a lot of times I can't even talk about it because the statute of limitations hasn't run. And I'm just giving you some word up on an analysis to get you some direction. You're a damn fool if you don't listen to somebody who's done it and at least consider it. Unity is great. The only problem is that most of the people that you would wind up unifying with will be traitors, informants, snitches, fools, and pimps. So just beware. Before you start talking about unification, get rid of the dead wood.
Yeah, get rid of the
Everybody's entitled to an opinion, but every opinion is not a good opinion, and most of them ain't worth shit, but some of them are. So listen. The other thing is you got to be brave, got to be courageous, and if you're too damn afraid to die to do anything, you'll never get anything done.
This is true. I agree, definitely, Judge. You're right about that. So thank you so much. And go Hamilton, go.
Yeah, I'm pulling for the brother. He's got a Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali all rolled into one.
And yeah, he's not a household name in America.
No, his father's from Jamaica, and he supported him, worked 2 jobs, he said, so he could learn to race golf. What do they call them? Go-karts. And this man, remember, he drives a $28 million race car for Mercedes. He may be the highest paid athlete in the world. I know Michael Schumacher, who he's tied with the number of championships, 7, was.
What about some of those soccer guys? I can't think of their name. You know what I'm talking about? Them soccer guys.
Well, how many people do they have on a soccer team?
That's a good question. That's the world's most popular sport, though, right?
Yeah, I know, but how many do you have on a soccer team, and how many soccer teams do you have?
That's a good question. I don't know.
A Formula One Grand Prix, the grid is 20 cars. Each team gets 2 cars, so that's 20 drivers. There are only 20 of these drivers in the world driving the most technically advanced, expensive race cars on the planet. The Mercedes puts out almost 1,200 horsepower in a 1,600-pound vehicle. And the engine is a hybrid engine that gets 72% fuel efficiency, which nobody can get. The technology can actually go into a street car. It's part piston engine and part electric motor. So when you get them both hooked up, you got a hell of a lot of horsepower. And unlike with a traditional gas engine, The electric motor gives instant torque. You have to worry about depleting your battery, so it's use the torque from the electric motor when you need it and let your turbocharger charge up the battery when you don't. So in Mexico City, which is one of the fastest tracks, some of these cars have been clocked at 240 miles an hour down a reasonably long straight. In Imola, they get 230 on a regular basis. Oh, you're slamming into a corner that you're taking at 180 miles an hour. That is a sport where it's the next thing to being a gladiator. You can die.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hey, you gotta have some big ones on you.
Oh yeah. And have you ever watched the stuff?
Not really. I mean, on TV, but not really. Like,
No, I mean, but the way they do it in the race now, by regulation, every car has to have a certain number of TV cameras in it. One essentially down low looking forward, one looking back, and another one up high where you can see the driver's hands, his instruments, and the road. So these guys are down pretty damn low. And like Hamilton said, you're down so low you can't see much ahead of you. They've got the race course laid out on one of these GPS things that's in the middle of the steering wheel. So you're hurtling down at 190 miles an hour and you really can't see this curve up in front of you. You got to memorize where you're turning in at 190 because you can't see the apex because your viewpoint won't let you see it. So that's kind of like, okay. And when you look at it, some people can't watch it when they switch to the cars because they get vertigo. I mean, these dudes are hauling ass. Like, somebody said, why are you looking at that? I said, well, watch this. She said, damn, I didn't know it's like that. Damn. That's too intense. I can't handle that. So, people watch it and they get caught up because the brother upholds. I mean, Hamilton's so damn bad, man. It's like they used to bad mouthing. And then they got to saying, he doesn't even have the best car this year. But, this man can reach down and pull something out nobody else can for that one lap, man. And it's just all over. Like they're calling him the GOAT.
They go that fast turning corners. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, you going in the circle. Now you're going straight, right? Well, Formula One is straight.
And then you turn corners left and right.
At that speed, though.
Yeah. I mean, but they have curves where you have to slow down to 40 miles an hour at the end of a 200-mile-an-hour straight in order to make the curve.
That's really impressive, though. I mean, I'm thinking about football or basketball, but you gotta have something. You gotta be an athlete to be able to ride, whip them cars like that.
And then you can hear the drivers, and at the end of a race, they'll be going, because they're tired. It's 120 degrees where they are down on the track.
Jeez. And they got to wear all that stuff.
And there's no power steering. And the wheel doesn't turn all the way around. It just goes like that. And you got to put all that force into turning wheels that are 3 feet wide. I mean, the track, the tread's 3 feet wide.
I got respect.
And by the way, some women want the rules changed so the cars are easier to drive so women can drive them.
Hell, I mean, I'm gonna let that go. All right, Judge, thank you so much.
Oh, one other thing on that. The Americans took over Formula One, so they decreed that they had no more women that were gonna come out holding up the signs as a who's who. So they had all these little 7 and 8 year old kids who were like deer stuck looking in the headlights of these crowds. So finally, from Monaco, where Hamilton lives, Monaco said, we don't give a damn. This is Monaco, Monte Carlo. We will have babes. So Hamilton was out there looking at these fine babes in green. He said, thank God, we're back to sanity. He said, we don't need these little 7, 8-year-old kids trembling and peeing on themselves. Bring these beautiful women back. What is wrong with you?
I'm glad somebody got some sense, man. This is going too far.
Yeah, anyway, let me get out of here, man. It's 3:22 in the morning. Hell.
Thank you so much. We love you madly. In the words of Duke Ellington, you keep on producing and pushing.
Yeah, there you go. I'm out of here.
Yes, sir. And that does it for this edition of Around Midnight with the Judge. And I hope y'all enjoyed yourselves. It's been always a pleasure to host this very honorable man. And yes, he's running for mayor of Memphis. He's confirmed it several times on different platforms. So we'll see how everything turns out. But y'all take it easy. Thank y'all so much. And I'm going to have this disclaimer because, like I said, they like to counsel folks. Disclaimer: the views expressed by hosts and guests on the We All Be TV platform are not the official views, opinions, beliefs, or perspectives of We All Be News or the We All Be Group Incorporated. We All Be News is an organization that thoroughly believes in supplementing the information narrative that is usually supplied by corporate news entities with those viewpoints, expressions which may be marginalized or ignored for a plethora of reasons. We are about informing the general public on alternative perspectives as it relates to news and information, and letting the general public be the ultimate judge in deciding on how to use said information. Informed citizens are responsible citizens. Thank you for your support. Thank everybody who donated tonight. Brother Ladarius Butler out in Jackson. And I couldn't see everybody's super chat. So if I didn't get to you and if I got to you late, my bad, because the way my thing is set up, I can't see everything always with the comments and also people donating. But thank you all for supporting the platform and for being great guests. And I'm not tired. I know people, you tired, Brother Ron. No, I could have went on for several hours. Matter of fact, I'm going to do something else for several hours. This is my second show. So I've been on here for about 5+ hours. So no, I'm not tired. I know y'all tired, but thank y'all so much. And you can support Cash App, $R2C2H2, Google PayPal, Google Pay, and think about it, Zelle, R2C2H2 @gmail.com. Also, Vimo at R2C2H2. You can buy Art of His Art. You know, you see all this stuff. And somebody asked me who was this. This is Jimmy Lunsford, one of my favorite music heroes and black heroes of all time. Jimmy Lunsford. R2C2H2.com. You can wear Art of His Art. I got my monk on. Get my monk on around midnight. The loneliness in the back. Go down to this below the description box to the Teespring shelf. You can access some of that stuff. And thank you all who've been buying and supporting that as well. Appreciate it. Yeah, support the judge. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Yeah. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all. Y'all have a great night. Enjoy y'all Sunday. And I'll have some more shows in the very near future. So thank y'all for supporting always. Very educated chat room for the most part. Y'all got a lot of interesting things to say. Add a lot to the conversation. Keep it going. The marathon continues. One love. Peace out.